Fwank.com, if you're not familiar. That's my version of frankspeech.com, which is Mike Lindell's website, wherein he is continuing his attack on democracy. Although I will have to admit that real news has for no pun intended, sort of trumped the election fraud storyline that they are trying desperately to hang on to, and aligning that is very difficult for them because they were clinging on to this. Every time we turn around, there's another dead talking point. Right now, we just got a report that while inflation had spiked 3.6% over the norm in the first half of the year, the Fed is seeing inflation easing as of July. And so at the exact same date that we're getting news reports about how high inflation went this year, post-pandemic and only for 6 months or so, we also get at the same time, we get reports that it is tapering off and on its way down and establishing kind of the baseline for the rest of the year, and is not going to continue to climb at that rate, which is good news for everyone and not unexpected, because you have to understand, we have been in terms of economic vacillation since 2008. Everyone's felt a little bit on the ropes about where we are financially as a country. The conversations about, oh my God, we're printing money seems to be the knee-jerk go-to conversation, when in reality the Fed has been buying up securities and burning off some of the money that we supposedly have just been printing madly over the last little bit. We are now, of course, bringing to an end the Afghan conflicts, the Afghan war, the Afghan situation, however you want to put it, wherein we have been effectively burning somewhere between $140 to $300 million a day for 20 years, depending on on average. And that money, obviously, if you're going to talk about money that we're just creating out of thin air, making debt of, and then setting fire to, that's a great example. Now, overall, we are going to be hearing from, I have no doubt, we are going to be hearing from a lot of lovely folks that, in the news over the next little bit that will be, and by the way, chat room, I hear your, the echo. I will be fixing it as best we can. It will take a moment, I beg your pardon. I will solve it in just a moment once we get to break. But thank you. And echoing and reverb, that's lovely. I'm glad there's a nice effect on here at some point. But over the course of the next, I would say, week and a half, as we reach the deadline that brings us to the end of the Afghanistan war / conflict / occupation / nation building exercise, you're going to see yet another talking point die. And one of them, I guess the primary one, was that Trump had a plan at all, which if he did, he did not use it. And the material changes that allegedly happened, I guess no one's actually alleging that happened in the last year. Nothing changed between now and last year and the year before that, and the year before that. So any plan that would have been implemented could have been implemented, and yet never was. Never was. It's a very curious thing. So over the next week or so, we're going to hear the death of the inflation talking point, the death of the Afghanistan woulda, shoulda, coulda been better. Today, watching the Jen Psaki briefing, not only was there a question about the White House dog, and several people bringing up the idea that when Biden was talking to the new Israeli prime minister and saying, look, we're going to, as far as Iran will not be allowed to get a nuclear weapon. If we will try diplomacy first. That will be our first, approach to this. And if that doesn't work, there are other options. That you could feel the titillation in the room as many of these folks were saying, could you please say nuke? Could you please say we're going to bomb them? Because in reality, what he meant was sanctions, freezing accounts, cutting off trade and travel, adding more sanctions to people who do business with them, moving backwards. That's everything short of dropping a Moab. But what they really want to hear is, why aren't we doing to Iran, what we're going to stop doing in Afghanistan, and when are we going to start doing it in Yemen, I suppose. 773-763-9278 is our number. One of the best things, and I'll be playing the clip once I can bring it up in a few minutes after I fix my some sort of strange echo that's going on in the world of the cyber streams. That over the course of the next hour, we'll see that Trump has created a new form of ISIS out of whole cloth, which is pretty interesting. He just made it up. Just didn't remember what the real name is, so he just decided to make one up. He just created a whole new, and I guess that's your prerogative as a former president and one of the biggest presidential losers in all time. How do you get more votes than you got last time, and you still lost horribly? I think all that points to is, yes, indeed, folks. As long the more people are allowed to vote, the more people will vote, and that's obviously the thing that Republicans across this country are trying to fix, because there's always been this sort of debate about whether or not the Republican Party as a whole is racist, whether asking for IDs is racist, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, even beyond the personal failings, emotionally, xenophobically, psychosexually, of the Republican Party, what you can't disagree with is that the basic premise of both parties is that the Democrats believe in democracy, hence the name. One person, one vote, everyone has a say, no one's vote is more important than anyone else's. And the Republicans believe in a republic based on the Electoral College. And that the heart and soul of the Republican Party as a concept is there are people who know better than the people. And honestly, if you let the rabble vote, they will pick they will act like a mob, and they will make stupid decisions. So therefore, we need to intervene on their idiotic behalf and tell them what's good, because we, the landowners, or the big agribusiness, the Dow Chemicals of the world, we know what's best for the people. The irony of this is that at the very same time the Republican Party is resting on this concept, is this functioning source of governing, this idea that that's how a country should be run, that they're effectively experts in how a country should be run, and we should defer to them, and that if we vote wrong, they should be able to fix it for us because they know better. This is the Republican Party's genuine platform, and at the same time, they are losing human beings hand over fist to COVID-19 because their base refuses to listen to genuine experts in the field of disease that would prevent them from dying. I recently found out that a friend of mine, I had two friends who got COVID who had been vaccine holdouts. Now I had not known that they were waiting on it at all. I just kind of found out sort of after the fact. Roommates, one of them got COVID, and then the other one went, oh crap, ran out and got the vaccine that day. Because and by the way, both Republicans, just for the record. Let me show you how the mentality works. Kudos to one of them for running out and getting vaccinated, but waiting till you're exposed, that doesn't give me hope or reassurance that, let's just say, whoever you pick as to run things, that you go, that person shows my values. That person shows me, that represents how I would handle problems. That if you're that way and you're picking that person, that's giving me a lot of faith in that person. So they went out, they got the vaccine. Too late, of course, and within the first week of having been vaccinated one time, they had already been exposed and they caught COVID. Took them 2 weeks to shake it. Never went to the hospital, but had some very close calls, and just suffered through it. They are not necessarily young, but certainly fitter than some of the folks that are finding themselves in the hospital, but not by much. And in many ways, lucky for them, probably got the wild type in terms of the timing and where it was. But we're talking about folks who came this close. Now, since the second person who got sick, who got dosed once, went and got the second dose, I have no idea, nor does anyone, what the interval for vaccine efficacy is for you got the first dose, then when you got sick, and then after that, sort of got the second dose, and maybe 2 weeks later it will work. Curious. Anyways, we got to take a break. I'm Hal Sparks. I'm filling in for Joan Esposito. Today I will be back. I will be taking calls. We'll be talking about the news. The news is full of people who apparently were anti-mask and anti-vaccine who are now dead or dying specifically for the stubborn support of Donald John Trump. There's just no other way to put it. These folks are dying for Trump to love them. And he doesn't. We'll be back. I think I know what's going on. Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Check. Okay. Hopefully this will... Thank you. I can't hear music coming from Chicago, so I don't know when we're going to break. When we hear it,
Yeah.
Okay.
We're already on break.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I just took it off because I know you're on chat room.
Yeah, that's okay. No. I appreciate it. I just let me know the fade in when the music's going, so I can time my way out. That'll help.
Oh, she doesn't have a music. I just play her
cool.
outro.
Okay. Yeah, that's.
So
cool.
play the outro.
Yeah, you could just let me hear the tip of it so that I know it's happening, like so that I know when I'm at break. Just that sounds really bad, but yeah, that'll work.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Let me see if okay. So did that get rid of the echo, guys, in the chat room? Yeah. Hello. Did that help? Little bit of an echo? Yeah. Let's see. Why would that be? More like reverb. I think that's just the room. So hold on. Check. Okay, let's see. I hear... Check. Check 1, check 2. I mean, this is... Maybe... Is this a little... It's a software thing? That's good. It's good. Hey, maybe it's just because the volume was low and it was catching it from something else. It's the room. Okay, probably. Yeah, it's just normal room sound. I apologize. I'll just lean into the microphone. I'll just aim it flat and shouty. That's terrible. Hey, look at that. Okay, so hopefully, yay. All right. That might be part of it. All right.
1 minute.
Thank you.
We do have a caller, Harrison from Pilsen.
Okay.
He wants to comment about Afghanistan.
Right.
And all that.
Okay.
Or not.
Okay. Let's see if I can find this piece of audio. Okay, I'm gonna have to go.
5 seconds.
Okay, thanks.
Attention, everyone. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, live from Chicago. Actor, comedian, and multimedia personality, Hal Sparks.
How you doing? Yes, we already have callers. 773-763-9278 is our number. We're on WCPT 820. Program it into your dial, folks. You got buttons on your radio for a reason. So you can just, there's two ways to do it. Depends on your car. You can just push on it, hold it there, and it will accept it. Or you can push whatever the store button is, then push the button, then some cases hit store again. That's all the tech support I can do for you in a moving car. I won't do any more. I'm sorry, but it's crucial. So welcome back to the show. Who do we have on the line, Lady B? And by the way, hi, Lady B. Just for the record.
Hi.
Who do we have?
So we have Harrison from Pilsen.
Excellent. Welcome to the show, Harrison.
Hi. I've called Joan, but I'm a virgin caller with you.
Right on. Well, be gentle.
I had an idea. Oh, okay. I will. I don't know if you're familiar. I saw a photograph. It was in black and white of some young women in Afghanistan. Maybe it could have been Beirut, wearing Western garb with, like French purses and kind of short skirts. And
from the 50s?
I guess this was like from the early 70s.
All right. Yeah, close enough.
And it made me, pardon me? I didn't hear you.
Yeah, no, yeah. I said from the 50s, okay. But the early 70s is pretty close. But yeah, go ahead.
So, I'm sure you've heard like Beirut was really kind of like happening city. It was called the Paris of the Middle East.
Yep.
So there was a lot of like, Western culture that apparently they kind of wanted, right? They totally wanted it. They wanted stability. They wanted the products. They wanted some, what kind of we have.
Yeah.
So, and then I was watching TV or something, and someone was like, "Oh, we have to stop forcing Western culture on this and that." And I'm so against what the assassinations of CIA. We could go into it forever about forcing our culture. But in terms of like what the Middle East had in the 70s, it seemed like they kind of wanted that.
Yeah. There is a reality.
I wonder what you think about that.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
who's forcing what? Like, it seems like these religious fanatics and these tribalists and these drug cartels are forcing what's going on.
Precisely. The mistake, I think, in a lot of ways is that the mistake that I think that a lot of people make is that somehow the poppy and Muslim extremist culture is what's natural to the area just because it supposedly is. It's that, this concept of the people that live there as, it is in many ways what, it would be the left of center version of racism, where people just assume that that's their default point, not that they would have their own version of these things, any more than, like Western suits or some sort of an invasion on people's fashion choices, and the back and forth, because obviously Nehru jackets made a big impact on the Beatles and whatnot. Yeah. There was a lot of cultural exchange going on at the time. Right.
They didn't want to go back to 12th century. That's is this, it's like, all of a sudden, there's a group of United States that probably want to take us back to 1600. But besides that small group
closer
of people,
to the 1800s, but
most agree with going backwards. So, just that whole idea of like blanketly saying we're forcing our culture on others. Medicine is medicine. You get an MRI in Japan, you get it here. It's the same machine, the same thing, and people want that.
I'll give you an example. I went to so right before the Beijing Olympics, the Chinese government bulldozed the hutongs, which are these little clay huts that were in front of the Forbidden City and this giant, and they turned it into this big Olympic garden, right? Yeah. And I went there.
I remember that.
Right. I went there. I've been to China many times, and I was there and I walked around in it and stuff, and it was abject poverty. The people who lived there, eight families on a row sharing a toilet. They lived in these kind of clay huts. But for tourists for years, it was this kind of prurient view of the impoverished Chinese that they would kind of go, isn't this quaint? And look at the culture they have within this. When in reality, the people that lived there were in terrible shape. And ultimately, the Chinese government rolled in, broomed them all out, moved them to apartment buildings where they had indoor plumbing and all kinds of stuff, which to the visitors there would seem like a westernization of this circumstance. But all of those people lived healthier and longer because of that move. But the tourists themselves
normalizing their life, man.
Right.
And that's communism, and that bringing people up out of dirt poverty is supposedly bad. I just
well,
don't.
in that case, by the way, that wasn't traditional communism or socialism on their part either. That was PR,
sure.
And they moved those people into buildings that were created by people who wanted to live in Beijing and had to work for 2 years for free to get a Beijinger card and move in there.
I get it.
Like
it's
all
not
the
really what
but all the abstracts about China,
the way that they paint it,
right? The way it's been painted is sort of akin to what you're talking about in Afghanistan. People will want what they want. Parts of culture that float to the top will float to the top. If they enjoy it, they enjoy it. And then other aspects will cross over. And cultural exchange is a valuable part of human interaction. And the people who want to build a wall between the normalization of cultures across borders are very curious to me, considering they seem to... that it's that idea: are we a melting pot or are we a salad, or are we literally we went from a melting pot to a salad where all the parts are separate but under the same dressing, as it were, to I don't want my peas to touch my carrots. And there's a lot of that going on right now, and I think that's more akin to what you're talking about. And it's an abject fear and quite frankly a bizarre sort of low self-esteem about your own culture, that it has no value and that it doesn't bring good in the world, and you've been taught that for a long time. So there's a mishmash of reasons why people believe that. But the reality is that Iran used to be a place that the British went to ski. There was a lot of cultural exchange between those two countries. They saw each other as equals on a lot of different fronts. And then, quite frankly, the tribal leaders saw the value of oil. They were willing to kill to get control of it, and they knew that the people who they were selling it to were willing to kill to get control of it. And it's been mainly the oil wars in the world have been a battle between the two worst groups of people in the world, for the exact same reason, because these tribal leaders see a way of absolutely securing money that they can give to their tribe to keep them afloat, feed them, keep them alive, in the same way that the Western world has been viewing oil as the engine of democracy, the engine of our industry. This is not weird. And to kind of backdate your own personal, our own personal hatred towards pollution and climate change to people in the 40s and 50s is a little silly. Especially if the whole goal is to move forward. One of the best things about moving forward is that you recognize where you were and what you have changed and will change. So that's a constant problem we find ourselves in. It's a great call. Thank you. I appreciate it's great. Kylo in our chat saying, Iran, come for the skiing, stay for the religious fascism. Well, this was pre-religious fascism. So that's the thing. And ultimately, the goal of the world should be stable cultures that can live to the fullest within their culture, but that can share it with the rest of the world in an offering kind of way, not in a forced kind of way across the board. And if, in many ways, a lot of travelers, if they bother to travel at all, and that's one of the big things we need to fix after COVID, is the number of Americans across the spectrum of our political divide that travel, that see other cultures and see their respect for ours and our respect for theirs, and the crossover that happens. It's incredibly important, because it's easy to other a group of people if you never run into them. It's one of the reasons why the right wing fought cable for so long, was because they knew the minute you saw black people and gay people and Asian people and women in power and things you just didn't see normally in the neighborhood, it was hard to vilify those things and make them seem like an impossibility. And if you normalized them in what you were seeing in the world, even if it wasn't in your own town, it was across the world or in a piece of fiction, eventually it creates a situation where the possibility is there and you start recognizing that possibility and you don't fear strangers. Xenophobia is rooted in this this concept of the other and the permanent other, and then and ne'er the twain shall meet. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. I'm Hal Sparks. I'm filling in on Joan Esposito Show. Call in if you'd like to, 773-763-9278. Next up, we'll hear about ISIS K. Yeah, it's on its way. ISIS K. Good God. think I can.
Need a new social media account to follow for progressive politics? WCPT 820 is your best source for both progressive politics and programming. Give us a like on Facebook and a follow on both Twitter and Instagram.
Knocked out 100% of the ISIS caliphate. I knocked it out in Syria.
Okay, here we go. Mm-hmm. Let's see if I can find the. Hi, chat room, by the way. I'm not missing you right now. Audio's okay. Did it help? Made a couple of changes. I am doing my regular stream today. I will basically just roll straight into it. So it's going to be a good long one today. Hi, kids.
30 seconds.
Oh.
And here you have Brian, and he's driving on the expressway.
Okay.
88. And Craig from Indiana.
Okay, great. Thank you. What could be causing this echo situation? El gato. The cat. Maybe that's it.
Corrections, not 30 seconds, 45 seconds.
Okay. Totally different. Welcome back. I believe. I think we're back. I'm just going to take it as if. You can't get enough.
No, we're not back
we're
yet.
Not. Okay, sorry. Is that the spacer?
We still got like 25 seconds of
excellent.
traffic.
Okay, cool. Sorry. That was the traffic music. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Let's see what we shall see. Now the question is there a second choose in here? Let's see. Maybe that's what's going on. Let's see. Let's see. Check.
Coming back.
Okay, thank you.
You're on.
Okay. Welcome back to the show. I'm Hal Sparks, filling in for Joan Esposito. Today we have a lot of callers on the line, and I want to, many people may not be aware that we were all introduced to the ISIS West, which is the group of ISIS that is in and amongst the Afghans and the Taliban that are trying to stop the Taliban from taking the country because the Taliban are too soft. And so they're the ones who blew up the bomb at the air base that killed 13 service members and wounded 15 others. At this current count, killed and injured up to 170 Afghans, including women and children. Because that's what you do to show your God you mean business. And apparently. And ISIS West is, it exists in name only, largely. It is like a lot of these faction groups, it can just claim itself like parts of the Taliban, quite frankly. They are learning from the Taliban. And the lesson of the Taliban is that everybody's Taliban and nobody's Taliban. And it only matters when a fight for power starts that you realize who's Taliban and who isn't. And get used to that idea over the next 6 to 10 months in Afghanistan. It's been going on since the 90s, and it will continue. That said, one of the things that they have to deal with and that will unify the folks that regard themselves as Taliban more than anything else is the existence of ISIS in the West, ISIS-K, they call it. And these are, think of this as the Delta variant of ISIS. Not quite. More like the Beta variant, because they're not quite as big. So the reality is that this is something that the Taliban is going to have to deal with. And that explosion was meant to bring to a halt, the evacuation efforts and scare the Taliban and make the U.S. leave sooner is the theory. So we shall see if it actually amounts to anything. But in reality, the Taliban are going to have to deal with this group of ISIS. But apparently, there's another one. There's an even further and a more macho sounding one. By the way, let's see if we can hear this. Let's see if you. Where are you? There we go.
And
there we go.
X, as you know, I knocked out 100% of the. And ISIS-X, as you know, I knocked out 100% of the ISIS caliphate. I knocked it out in Syria, Iraq. We knocked it out. So now they have a new ISIS called ISIS-X, and that's members of the.
Yeah, it's a new ISIS called ISIS-X, and it's members of the Taliban, and we don't know where they came from because apparently they they were all wiped out and now exist. ISIS-X. For those of you that don't know, ISIS-K is directly because of the word for West starts with a K, and they started calling them ISIS-K for their westernly moving into Afghanistan. ISIS-X obviously is just like ISIS, but it has a testosterone booster, and you really you want to cycle it in and out of your steroids. You do not want to take it for any extended length of time. It causes, ISIS-X will give you a back knee, clearly. I'm working on the reverb and the echo, guys. I apologize. Please bear with me. I hear you. All right. So, the primary audio has to go to Chicago, so I have to make sure that that's quality, and then so I can't screw up anything on that side while I'm fixing it while I'm doing the show. We do have other callers though. Who do we have, Lady B?
We have Brian.
Excellent. Hey, Brian, welcome.
Yeah, hello. How are you doing? Nice speaking with you.
Good. Thanks.
Question I got for you is, Question I got for you is, I wound up getting COVID. I mean, pretty bad. They say depending on the levels that you were exposed to, like my daughter and my ex-wife, they lost taste and smell and were just tired. I got it to where they came on like a freight train. I had a hard time breathing, cold sweats. I was on the couch for about 2 weeks, so it finally broke, thank God. But they're saying is, and this is an honest question, they're saying is, depending on how it affected you, which affected me quite severely, I might have like 80 to 80%, against it. Do they recommend getting the vaccine depending on, because I know if you just had it mildly, you definitely need to get vaccinated. But if you had it severely, they say that you have a higher tolerance against it. I really haven't got a clear answer.
That's a debatable point right now. What the CDC is recommending, and what the National Institute of Health is recommending, and the Mayo Clinic and everyone is that you would wait a period of time after you've had it to get the vaccine. Primarily, like I had Pfizer. I think the mRNA ones is mainly what they're talking about, Pfizer and Moderna. And the idea is that you would get it after a period of time after you've had it to protect yourself from the variants. Okay. Because the reality is that having the wild type may protect you from Delta in some cases, but it may not. And it depends on your immune system. And if you were hit hard, it's very possible that you were, you're closer to the window of where you could be hurt. I would recommend talking to your doctor about it, but currently what they're saying is about 3 weeks to 6 weeks after you've had it, you can get, vaccinated. So that I think is in many ways the main answer they have now. And again, this is an ongoing situation. So what people will often say is medical misinformation is literally learning new stuff on the ground. And we have what I would call a new study syndrome in the United States, especially in the media. If you watch any, television or whatever, you'll see a new study about every 6 weeks that, chocolate's bad for you. Oh my God, chocolate's so good for you. Coffee is terrible. Coffee is great. Salt is terrible. Salt is great. And it back and forths on these single studies. Instead of going, a peer-reviewed journal has put together, a compilation of 20 different studies, and we now know that this is the general consensus. Now, even the general consensus, any doctor or scientist will tell you, does not pertain to 100% of all cases. And so there can be variance in all of these things, and to pretend that there's not because you have a generalized consensus is silly. So the goal is to get if you have any concerns, get the most personal experience medically that you can possibly come up with, which is go see your doctor. And if they need to run blood tests to see if that's necessary or where your antibodies are, do that. Before I got vaccinated, I had, multiple, I was convinced I'd had it early on in the process, but I tested negative for the antibodies. And then people were finding out that maybe the antibody test didn't work initially. And maybe if I went back and got it again, that, it might be clearer. But by then I'd already been vaccinated. So would it read that versus my initial infection? So this is not a problem of science being right or wrong. This is the problem with people assuming that in a fluid situation, gathering information, some of which might be statistical noise, has to factor into your behavior and what you're doing. But in general, right now, the mask issue, I think, is a great example too. So the initial belief in scientific communities was that surgeons wore masks in the emergency room largely to protect you from their spittle. That while they're talking to nurses and that kind of stuff, they're expectorating a little bit of water particles every time they speak, and they would rather not drop those droplets into your wound while they're doing it. But insofar as protecting them or everybody else against infectious disease getting into you, there was no scientific study on the efficacy, so they always assumed that wouldn't, because these particles are so small that they must be able to get through the fabric or around the fabric into your nasal passages. Of course they exist, and therefore, since these masks are not meant for that, they will not stop the disease. Turns out that during the process, they started studying it because people were wearing masks. The advice was that anecdotally, they were finding that in areas where they enacted masks, they had lower infection rates. So there must be something to it. So they did full-on studies, and the full-on studies came out last June. And all of the June studies in Europe and here said, oh, actually, not only does it protect you from the actual particles that fly out when somebody speaks and getting into your face and keep you from doing the exact same thing, but it also lowers the impact of the virus on you and the amount you get in your system. So the chance of your body fighting it off is much higher instead of you getting a large blast of it, which is why people in high concentration areas, namely frontline workers, were dying, because even though they were wearing masks, it was the hyper exposure initially, which is why they started moving people into separate rooms, why they started hooking them up to devices, changing their bags outside of the room, those kind of things, is because it wasn't that the mask didn't protect them, is that the volume in the space was so overwhelming, and an ICU is basically a sealed environment. Everywhere else, the standard is different. So when they did tests on masks, what it showed was not only does it protect you, but it lowers, if you are exposed, the amount of virus getting into your system, and lowers the chances that you will end up in the hospital because your body is able to fight off a lower dose of this virus getting into your system than if your system's overwhelmed with it everywhere. So the right wing will push this idea. So Fauci was against masks, and now he's for masks, and now he thinks 5 masks. The reason is because there was no indication, because nobody bothered to do it before we had a pandemic of this level, massive tests and testing to see if masks worked in that category. They knew they worked to keep a doctor's spittle out of your chest while they were cutting you open. But they did not know if these tiny little specks would eventually work there, would get past the mask itself, and to what extent. Last June, they put a pin in that. And so any debate about whether or not masks help is gone. But what the right will sell you is that there's some variance in this kind of stuff, when in reality, they just needed to do tests before they could assure everyone that masks would be enough, which is also why they told everybody not to go out. While we're looking into this whole mask thing, maybe don't go out until we know it's safe. So, motorcycle helmets used to suck because they didn't recognize, they thought they were protecting your head from scraping the ground and hitting the ground by cracking your skull. When in reality, the vast majority of the injuries they were dealing with is your head bouncing against the inside of your skull. Concussions. Same thing with football. So that they started designing the helmets differently. Because initially, if you look at Army helmets a long time ago, They don't. Modern Army helmets look like bicycle helmets, largely. And the reason is because they're protecting you against concussion, and they collapse, just like, you know, cars now have collapsible fenders and the like to absorb impact. We now know that. That doesn't mean that those scientists who said you probably should put a helmet on if you're going out into battle were wrong. They just didn't know. First of all, they didn't have technologically the option to create helmets like that at the time. And they were doing the best they could with what they had. Same thing with the beginning of the pandemic. So I appreciate the call. Stay safe. I'm glad you made it through that. It's a very scary notion. We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's a Joan Esposito show. I'm Hal Sparks filling in. We'll be right back after this.
Social media account to follow for progressive politics. WCPT 820 is your best source for both progressive politics and programming.
I think
so like on Facebook.
Brought me up. Is that too much? There we go. I think we're a little better. Does that bring my mic up a little bit better, kids? This has been, I'm going to switch mics for the live stream later on, just to see if that's where the problem lies. Because I kind of have a feeling it is. I think it's a digital issue. Still got a little bit of the reverby, echoey, but not as bad. I think that's the room. I think you're hearing a lot of the room. Can I hear? Check. Because I hear myself pretty well in here, but I shouldn't have to be right on top of this thing like crazy to bring up this. There we go. It makes it a little tinny in my ears, but at least it sounds a little clearer. I'm going to try to bring that up, and then I'll see if I can compensate elsewhere. Guys. Check 1, check 2. Okay, hopefully that'll be it. Too close reverbs. It happens. Check. There we go. All right, seems all right. That's loud there, but is this where I'm going to find out that everybody has me open in 2 windows, and that's why I keep getting the echo from you guys? Dude, there's an echo. I have you open on YouTube and on Twitch, and there's an echo. Oops. That's weird. Wow, that's an annoying noise. Check 1, sorry. Check. Is that a loop?
You're on.
Oh, I see. Chicago, I'm not hearing you right now. Beg your pardon. We'll fix it in just a second.
You're on.
Welcome back to the show. I think we might be back. I'm here. I'm having a bit of an issue. Give me another second, Chicago. Oops, that's another issue on my end. Wow, that's just terrible. All right. Give me 1 second, Chicago. I'm going to bring you up over here. Chicago, check.
You're back.
Okay, great. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry about that. I'm going to fix my audio issue on that end. I think I have figured out what might be part of what's causing the problem. Oh, that's fun. And yes, there we go. Beg your pardon. Hi, everybody. So I think we have other callers on the line as well. Lady B, if I'm not mistaken. So
We do. We have a couple.
Okay, excellent. So let me see if I can arrange for my audio situation to work out. I'm getting kind of a feedback thing, and I think it's coming from the other side, but I will figure out what that is in just 1 second. Hopefully it's not annoying the viewers or the listeners, and it's just deafening me. So welcome back, everybody. Let's see. Who do we have next, Lady B?
Craig.
Who's this? Sorry, who was it?
Craig from Indiana.
Excellent. Craig from Indiana. Hey, Craig, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you about the interview
Which one?
with Sebastian Gorka.
Oh, good Lord, yes. So,
Or-
for those of you who
Yeah,
don't
with
know,
what?
yeah,
Yeah. So
Trump had done
go
this
ahead.
thing where he, I suppose, he went on, beg your pardon, on Sebastian Gorka's show. He went on Sebastian Gorka's show, and it said that he would have gotten out of Afghanistan, but he would have kept Bagram Air Force Base. Now, obviously, I don't know how you get out and stay in at the same time. I think that's how he got into trouble with some of his accusers. But the madness of this idea that he repeatedly said he would have gotten out and nobody would have known we left, which begs the question, if they wouldn't have known we left, then why were we there in the first place? And I suppose there's some sort of logical reasoning in his head, but I can't find any. And so much of what he said on Sebastian Gorka's show was just kind of like floated by Sebastian Gorka, just presented as some sort of a reality that it makes it very difficult to understand how they let him have his cake and eat it too. I mean, that's been the example of that's been his whole life. He has his cake and eats it too. And everybody helps him do it. Literally, Sebastian Gorka was sitting there bringing cake to Trump and also spoon feeding it to him at the same time. It was embarrassing nonsense.
My question.
Yeah.
That's my question: is why are all these people like Jake Tapper just caving to him?
It's a good question. My true belief, my real reason is ratings. Is that if it bleeds, it leads, and you're going to hear a lot of folks getting very excited when we go to war or when bombs blow up and there's a lot of hand wringing and gnashing of teeth around this stuff. When in reality, today during Jen Psaki's press briefing, one of the reporters brought up, wasn't there a better way to do this? Where you did this, where we got our embassy people out in May quietly, and all 60,000 of them, and then started the removal of other stuff. And she basically said, "Explain to me how that works." And he goes, "Well, they leave during this period." Well, at that point, the Afghan government was allegedly functioning and was going to continue to function until we got out. So if we'd have pulled out all of our embassy personnel in 3 weeks, you don't think it would have fallen sooner? You don't think it would have just rung the dinner bell for the Taliban and been more chaotic? And do you think once we started removing, how many did we get past? What, 6? How do we get 6?
How does everybody get the right to armchair quarterback this?
Well, because it's America, and everybody has the right to. That's the reality of it. Everybody gets to say their piece, whether it makes sense or not. The reality, the circumstance that we're in is, I honestly think there's just too much ratings to be had there to even to allow a sensible conversation. Because it gets really boring really fast, even with what's going on there. And that's, I will not attribute sort of a large level of malevolence to these folks. But I will say that there's sort of a wanton disregard for reality. And what was stunning, I think, in Jen Psaki's return, like, what does that look like where we get out on the timetable you're talking about? And he goes, well, you're saying that there were 2 options here, and obviously there were a lot of other options. Well, yeah, there's a lot of options to get out of Afghanistan. We could all dress like bushes and sand dunes and sneak towards the Pakistani border. There are some options you eliminate early because they're stupid. There are only 2 viable options. Perhaps that's the language to hit this nail on the head as hard as you can. But that's what we're dealing with, is that it has to be spoon-fed to some of these folks so much because it's too easy This is like the bifurcation in that happens in psychological discussions about medicine, addiction, and other issues when they talk about it on the news, gender issues when they talk about it on the news, and certainly situations where we're in a battlefield situation. There are mechanical realities, and then there are a lot of people who are arguing against the mechanical realities all the time and trying to make the and which is fine, because if you think you can actually change reality by talking about it, good luck. But there are also a lot of, or presenting an option that people aren't thinking about. But when you present an option that everybody's thought about and everybody's dismissed, and you're even dismissing it as you say it, because even the reporter was like, what if you did this? Well, I mean, I know this wouldn't probably work, but like, if you did this, then obviously you could try, and well, that wouldn't work, but you could see him literally recognizing that it was falling apart. His own idea was falling apart right in front of him. There's a lot of that going around right now, and I think that's the primary part of it. That's the primary reality. That's the primary situation we find ourselves in, is that a whole lot of reporters are if-thenning for ratings. That's where we are. And they've always done this, and partly, especially in covering the Afghan war and Vietnam, because that's precisely the kind of talk that keeps us in there forever. The stay forever in Afghanistan crowd right now is extremely annoyed. Yeah. So, can anybody tell? I suppose. Does anybody know a perfect way to end a war? Now, Lawrence O'Donnell has said this is the best extraction from a war we lost ever. My only difference from him, where I differ from him philosophically, is that we did not lose the war in Afghanistan. We recognized that building a government for the Afghans when they didn't want to keep it afloat themselves, and building a military that was akin to ours for the Afghans did not work. And the value of human life and American taxpayer dollars in that circumstance versus the return on the investment, the value of what actually was occurring there, didn't measure up. And it's the exact same thing that everybody else who's been in there has come to the conclusion of. The Russians lost Afghanistan, the Romans lost it, the Mongols lost Afghanistan. No, they didn't. They gave up because it wasn't worth it. If it was worth it, they would have quintupled their efforts and just wiped everybody out a long time ago before we recognized that kind of savagery on an international level was grotesque. There were a lot of people, pre-1600s who went to Afghanistan and went, you know what, keep it. That's where we find ourselves in reality. Now, the people of Afghanistan who have decided they do like those things and do want those things, which, by the way, believe more into the Taliban these days than they certainly did, 20 years ago, all of those folks are or will be moving out of that space until something steadies and they can go back and hopefully salvage their own country. It should be abundantly clear to everyone that there is a heart for democracy and freedom and normalcy in all the peoples of the world. And there are armed, organized groups within every civilization that would seek to put an end to that. And in this particular case, we sort of uncovered which portion of the Afghan people don't want to live in a tribal territory with no functioning government. And we're trying to get as many of those folks out as we can. And one of the other things is that not all the Americans that are in Afghanistan are leaving or want to leave. And the American government will not forcibly extract Americans who do not want to leave. So, and I don't know why the right-wing, freedom-loving American first folks can't get that through their thick skull. Because from a libertarian perspective, If you want to leave America, the federal government has no right to seize you up and bring you back, unless they've got, I guess, an extradition order. And yet, that's where they are. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. This is the Joe Esposito Show. I'm Hal Sparks. I'm filling in. We'll be back. Thank you, Lady B. I don't know why, but I'm hearing like the weirdest sonic issue. I'm gonna give me 1 second. 3, 2, 1. So odd.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Somehow I'm getting an echo when I talk to you, and the call is.
Yeah, that, I don't know, let's see, where would that loop be? Because that's not coming back this direction. I don't see it. It doesn't go out my computer at all. Let me see.
Yeah, I don't see it either, so I don't understand.
Yeah, it's very strange. Okay, let's see.
It's not on Clean Feed, is it?
No, I don't think so. Nope. Is that better? Did that help at all?
Okay.
pH in your saliva can rate. Did you know that
I don't hear myself, and I'm hearing myself.
Normal, you do hear yourself a lot?
Yeah.
Oh, that's because I had to turn the mics up because I wasn't getting throughput on the other feed. I beg your pardon. So,
okay. Okay, then it's fine.
Yeah.
That is fine. If you need to hear me, then that's fine.
Yeah.
But the callers, when they were talking, I heard them. So I thought it was an echo.
No, it's not on you. See if I can bring this guy up and hopefully solve some of that. Check 1, check 2. All right.
And the lines are full.
Oh, excellent. Okay, and then this guy, I need the stream mix to go to monitor. There we go. Hopefully that does it. Can you check for me, Lady B?
Yes. Again, we have tons of callers.
Okay, great. That's, but I don't know why I don't hear. Let's see if this guy right here. Check. Can you run feed through there just so I can check for a second? Because I'm getting like
of the destructive Hurricane Katrina. Here's the AP's Kelly Adler.
If the forecast holds up,
Hurricane Ida is going to make landfall on August 29th there, which is the 16-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina.
Brian McNulty, who's a hurricane researcher at the University of Miami.
There's a chance for quite a lot of intensification, where we're looking at a Category 3 or 4 hurricane.
New Orleans Mayor Latoya Cantrell ordered the evacuation of everyone living outside the levee system. However, she also pointed out what's improved since Katrina, which was a Cat 3 storm.
Science has changed based on our ability to get more accurate information from the National Weather Service. So we have, and our communications have been improved as well over time.
I'm Shelley Adler.
The CDC says the number of coronavirus cases and deaths are up. White House Response Coordinator Jeff Zients says they're working to get kids 12 and up vaccinated.
The vaccination rate among adolescents is growing faster than any other age group.
A review ordered by President Biden shows intelligence agencies remain divided on the origins of the coronavirus, but believe China's leaders did not know about it before the start of the pandemic. Stocks are higher at the close on Wall Street. This is AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs.
1 minute.
Worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
I think.
Now your WCPT 820 Chicago traffic update.
Headed southbound on DeSable Lakeshore Drive, bumper to bumper, Michigan Avenue, down to the Chicago Avenue line. Northbound on the Bricks from Evening to Monroe. On the south side, 99th is closed at Vincennes due to a car versus train crash. Watch for delays on Metro's Rock Island line. On the northwest side, a level 1 hazmat for a chemical spill at a school. That's at Fullerton Parkway, just east of Central. If you're traveling on the inbound Edens, that's beginning to build solid into that Kennedy merge. Lake Oak Road down to the junction 25, outbound in 19. Kennedy outbound 25 to the Slick 22 in the express, 50 out to the airport. Inbound from O'Hare 1 hour, 39 of that off the junction. I get inbound reeling from earlier crash near Wolf, 390 into the circle, hour 2 outbound in 56. That's traffic. I'm Mary DeBadges.
15 seconds.
Thank you. This is WCPT 820. Listen in Chicago on 820 AM. Or stream us live on WCPT820.com. The TuneIn Radio app. Or tell Alexa or Google to play WCPT.
I think we're getting back to some semblance of
live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Killin is Chicago's own Andrea Darlis on WCPT 820.
I wish I was in Chicago live right now, but I am not. I'm currently in Las Vegas, where as an Angelino, as a current Californian, I have spent the vast majority of time with my girlfriend as we sort of wait out the pandemic and build our own, kind of nest here and all this. And I think a lot of people have done that as we've stopped and started back and forth through this. There's this kind of these vast unknowns about the flexibility of the pandemic and the circumstance we find ourselves in. And again, a lot of people blame it on the news. They blame it on what we what we knew before, we thought we knew, what we found out, what we adapted to what we found out, and then what the variant has modified over time. I mean, this is how it's like we're finding out what kind of scientists Americans would have turned it out to be, individually, who would just go with the anecdotal evidence and start doling out horse paste, and who would have waited for a controlled experiment of a controlled experiment of a controlled experiment so far that you never would have made any progress in the first place, and lots of people would have died because you didn't even bother. You're like, you don't do risk assessments, you only do pure science. Well, that's no way to deal with humanity either. So back and forth we've gone, and right now, Florida and Texas both are doing terrible in their response to COVID. They are the worst in the nation. If you don't count the sudden spikes like were caused by Sturgis, and it's ironic to me that a lot of people are saying, well, as many spikes as there are, in as much as there is a spike in South Dakota because of Sturgis, the rest of these people went back home, so they took COVID back on the ride with them. I mean, none of us, unless the tracking and tracing is done via satellite, with unless there really sort of was a chip in this disease, you wouldn't know where these folks returning from Sturgis took this disease and who it affected and got back. But if you look at the states from that most of them come from, and that most of them would go to something like this in the middle of this without wearing masks or not being vaccinated and all that kind of stuff, then you're looking at states like Texas and Florida, where the numbers are so bad that even the Florida judges are overturning DeSantis's anti-mask mandates and are recognizing the fact that the margin by which Governor DeSantis won his seat as governor, the difference in votes between him and who he was running against last time, is now smaller than the number of people who have died of COVID in his state while he's been governor. That's not the kind of statistic you want to run on as if you're planning on running for president in 2024. Luckily, your closest competition that isn't Donald Trump is Greg Abbott, and he's in the same mess. Now there's there's been a lot of talk about how there's a variety of people who are not taking the vaccine, therefore causing troubles for the rest of everybody and the whole wide everybody. And all over the place, and if you look everywhere, there's all kinds of people. But the reality is 85-90% of the actual human beings who are unvaccinated or refusing to get vaccinated are largely Trump supporters. They are not just, they'll vote for him, but I don't like his mean tweets. They're full on, I've been to 15 rallies and I'll go to the next one kind of Trump supporters. And oftentimes you will hear, well, you know, even had a governor last week saying it's the black community who's who's got vaccine hesitancy that's causing the spike statistically, and because statistically black people in our area are more apt to not be vaccinated than, say, white people in the area. The number, though, of actual humans versus actual humans, because remember, as I always stress, if they just give you the percentage and they don't give you the actual number, they're selling you something. If anybody tells you 10,000 people have died of this thing and they don't tell you the percentage, which is 0.00007% of people, you won't be able to weigh that number. 10,000 sounds huge. But if they tell you that, 35 to 70% of a group of people have suddenly done, we've seen a 500% increase in something. And then they go, how many is that? Well, we had 1 and now we have 8. They're not telling you the whole story. And when they tell you these stories about who's not being vaccinated and how the spread is actually happening, especially people who are apt to blame black people for vaccine hesitancy in their area for being a massive part of the spread, forgetting to recognize that the number of actual human beings that amounts to 46% of the black people that are vaccine hesitant, doesn't mean they're not going to get it, might feel like they have to wait or are afraid of needles, God knows 100 reasons, or just flat out are absolutely right-wing nutcases. There's vast majority of beliefs everywhere. But that 40% of human beings turns out to be about, you're talking about 16,000 people, whereas the 35% of the white people in the area, equals a couple of 100,000 people. So the chances of you running into a group that contains 260,000 people versus a group that has 13,000 people in it, or being 6 degrees separated from those groups, is, one would think, slightly higher in the group that has 260,000 people in it. And by the way, I'm estimating low. That's a county number. That's for a suburb number. So I've been vaccinated. I got the Pfizer vaccine earlier. My 8-month timetable will probably come up around November if I were to get or need a booster shot, because of sort of the early nature of having gotten it here where I am. Other people will be waiting till next spring even for that kind of thing. I know we have a lot of callers and we have a lot to talk about, but I wanted to bring up that fact that beyond the people who refuse the vaccine, who are not taking it, who are who believe that a rectal thermometer coated in horse paste is all they need to save themselves, is that's sort of up to them in some degree. But beyond the fact that they could spread it, which also seems to be lost on them and kind of violates, quote unquote, the freedoms of other people to know that an infected person is talking to them, because they won't even bother to check or they don't even care. Because part of freedom is being able to have as much information as you possibly can and not have stuff hidden from you. That we have this story, a Texas veteran dies from easily treatable illness amid ICU bed shortage. A Texas Army veteran died from gallstone pancreatitis, an easily treatable illness, last week after waiting 24 hours for an ICU bed to open up in the COVID-swamped state. according to CBS this morning. Daniel Wilkinson first went to his local hospital where ER Dr. Hassan Kakli diagnosed him with pancreatitis, telling him he'd need immediate treatment, but her medical center was unequipped to perform the procedure. With hospitals filled with COVID-19 patients, it took many calls and hours before they found an open bed at a VA hospital in Houston that Wilkinson could be taken to by helicopter. By the time he got there, 24 hours after he first arrived at his local hospital, his illness was too late to treat. They weren't able to do the procedure on him because it had been too long, his mom said. They told me that they had seen air pockets in his intestines, which means that they were already starting to die off. I've never lost a patient from this diagnosis ever, Cockley told CBS. We know what needs to be done, and we know how to treat it, and we get them to where they need to go. I'm scared that the next patient that I see is someone that I can't get to where they need to get to go. A U.S. Army vet. And every hospital bed around him taken up by people who have not been vaccinated. Now, occasionally you'll see some overrun where some people with quote-unquote breakthrough infections, and by the way, with the vast number of like faked vaccine cards and the fact that buying one and using one to keep or get a job is a federal offense, a lot of people aren't going to cop to. Is also some of the statistical noise in all this, that some people who supposedly have breakthrough infections often are treated with just oxygen, and those are the folks you see in the parking lot, you know, with an oxygen tank next to their car, not taking up an ICU bed, not being intubated. But in this particular case, everybody taking up beds in the area where he needed to go. And including the spillovers. They've got these, you know, tent ICU setups, all of them still taken up by unvaccinated COVID patients who thought it was all nonsense, who treated themselves with Ivermectin and zinc, and then ended up having to be intubated because they waited too long, quite frankly, because they thought it was fake, because they were told by, you know, the people on Fox News and other places that it was not a big deal and that it's just like the flu. And they end up in a hospital bed that was meant for this Texas vet who died of an easily treatable syndrome because they were taking the bed. We got to take a break. When we come back, more calls. 773-763-9278. I'm Hal Sparks. I'm filling in for Joan Esposito. She'll be back on Monday, I think. Right, Lady B? She's back on Monday. Pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So we'll be back right after this. So
Facebook, message us, Instagram, follow.
Thank you. Sound wise, guys, is it better for you guys in the chat room? Is it better? Let me know. There's always a delay when I ask, so yes. Okay, good. Excellent. Twitch audio sounds crystal clear. We can always count on Twitch.
Do you need me to send you sound or
nope.
you good?
No, we're good, I think. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Solved it. Man. Hurrah. Okay. Now the question is, can I move my microphone and tilt it and then be able to speak without... Oop, that was choppy for a second. That got a little weird. We're okay. Look at that. Oh, I know what it is. It's okay. Lady B is reverbing, though? That's very strange. I don't know why. It's a pure signal. I'm hearing it directly. Thank you, Rex. Appreciate that. Thanks, everybody in the chat room. Sorry I haven't been paying more attention to you. I've been trying to pick up some stuff, fix it. And I think, let's see, hopefully this guy comes back. And I've got, you know, Okay. We'll see if it, yeah. We'll be back in a minute, and then I'll be taking callers, and then we'll know. Thanks for your patience, everybody. That's what I get for changing all my, let's see. This guy right
here. 30 seconds.
Excellent. Very exciting.
You should hear the 5-second later.
Okay.
You back.
Okay. Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm Hal Sparks. I'm filling in for Joan Esposito. We got callers on the line, 773-763-9278. Who do we have, Lady B?
Steve from the Gold Coast.
Oh, right on. Steve from the Gold Coast. Excellent. Hey, Steve. Is he there? Do we have him? There he is.
I think he got us on hold. I'll put him back on hold.
Okay. That's what happened, Steve. We're ready for you. We're ready for you. Hop back on there. Let us know. He was waiting so long, and then I got on our.
We can go to gym.
We can go to gym. Let's go to gym, and we'll come back to Steve in a moment. Welcome, Jim. Are you there? Jim, do we have you? Jim, hello. Do we have
Maybe it's our side, so let me check the phone.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. That's all right. Believe me, I never have a problem just talking. That's always true. That's why they ask me to fill in so often, is because I can just yammer for 3 hours straight, and it's never been a problem. We have several, fronts where the Biden administration is dealing with both the wreckage left behind by the Trump administration and the actual problems that occur in life because that's how things work in the modern world. And our extraction from Afghanistan, which continues apace, considering the loss of life that the American forces and America itself has experienced, the horror show that occurred, in terms of the deaths and injuries to Afghan civilians as well outside the wall, and the recovery that they will go through, which is just heartbreaking, on top of our own losses, are the kind of thing we are all too familiar with in this country, as president after president has had to preside over situations like this. While at home, we still have a lot to deal with, both recovering from a pandemic, shoring up people's lives and the economy after that, and during a current phase wherein, on a lot of fronts, there's enough to juggle all the time without the addition of other problems. There just is, there always will be. This is the nature of modern society, and the fact that we see news from all around the world all the time. And we have our own internal domestic problems, foreign problems that relate directly to us, foreign problems that relate directly to our allies, and by extension, their allies that we have a tacit relationship to. The United States is 3 degrees away from every problem on the planet. And so the expectation that the American presidency will go through any period where it's not confronted with anything on a scale from a major international incident to a mass shooting here at home, or things like the rising murder rate across the country, or which is stabilized in a lot of ways, but is higher than people believe it should be, which is, I guess, a weird thing. Anyways, I think what it should be is zero. Now, no one expects we could get there, but what's a manageable window in the reality of a bunch of free people and a lot of loose guns? What's, where can we, what's the baseline we can keep it between? Because it does seem like we have a, especially in regards to the NRA and gun rights activists, we have sort of a manageable death window that they're okay with. And the same thing is true with our excursions overseas in terms of Afghanistan, Iraq, and other places like that. I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. Do we have it, Lady B?
Yeah, I have Steve.
Oh, excellent. We'll bring Steve from the Gold Coast in right now. Let me finish, and I'll finish that thought afterwards. Hey, Steve, welcome.
Hello, you hear me?
Yes, I do. There you go.
Okay, great. Usually I say it's me, it's not you. But in this case, it's definitely you. So,
right.
But I think there's a theme running through a lot of what you're saying there, and I think it's an important one to explore. Because a lot of these people, the people who rely on gatekeepers and the ones who are supposed to be delivering some sort of semblance of news and what is supposed to include some sort of semblance of journalistic standards,
right?
Has given way to the business that is journalism. And as you pointed out in a number of examples, there's a White House correspondent for a given news entity, and they don't have 12 people there. That person is supposed to be able to ask a coherent question on COVID yesterday,
right,
on Afghanistan tomorrow, and on rising or lowering of interest rates. Next day. I mean, they're not qualified to do that, and yet they send them in there, and then they ask some of these ridiculous questions. And I applaud Zinsaki because okay, so we were supposed to get out our embassy personnel, who, by the way, are the people who need to go ahead and do the work that allows us to provide the clerical, shall we say, background in order to get our people out. So, in other words, exactly how do you get out Americans when you have evacuated the State Department staff that is supposed to be screening these people to get them out?
Right.
Not to mention our Afghan allies. I mean, that was just a ridiculous question on its face. But I mean, and you make a wonderful point with regard to that. And then the same thing in terms of this whole, the way in which news delivers you science. There's somebody somewhere, because news media has become so integrated, there's a researcher, some kid working online to find some study that was published and such. And then, because people love to listen to stories about studies on the effects of coffee and chocolate, of wine, and whatnot, okay, let's go ahead and air this because people love it.
Right.
But as you pointed out, that's not how science is done.
No.
One isolated study is not how science comes to a conclusion. Yet people are led to believe, oh, well, there's a study, which means that means that the scientific community now believes is this.
Correct.
No, it's not.
No.
And then, therefore, when there's a contravening study 6 months from now, people, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yep.
They said something different 6 months ago.
Yeah,
No,
it undermines people's understanding and belief in science, because they hear constantly this vacillation back and forth, which no scientist takes as science. All of them recognize that they would need more information or a peer-reviewed or a combination of studies to make a consensus view. And even then, the consensus view needs it's still in the theoretical until they find some absolute law.
People, the guy who's, running the CTA train, from morning till night, I mean, I don't expect him to understand these things, but your local media outlet should have enough understanding of that, or be able to turn to someone who should be able to say to them, it's irresponsible to air that story in that way.
Yes.
Because you're feeding ignorance. But that, again, this is because news has become a business in America. And so it's about driving ratings, as you've indicated. So, and you're absolutely right. I wanted to say a couple of things about COVID, and you're getting closer to the break.
Sure.
But, science evolves. And, no one knew that the Delta variant was going to be around last September.
Correct.
So, I'm sorry, we have no way of guessing what the flu is going to be like 5 years from now either. I wish we did, but we don't. And so, what we need more information, because we're still using a lot of the same metrics. So we're still talking about test positivity rates and these sorts of things. What what we really need is another metric which says how many people are seriously ill, end up on ventilators, or dying who have been vaccinated, in addition to all of this, all the things we used to use, such as test positivity rates. Because if you're vaccinated, the likelihood that you're going to die from COVID right now, no matter what variant you can track, is extremely low.
Right.
And that's what we need to get across to people. So stop telling me that, see, you need another vaccine, or, there are breakthrough infections. Yes, there are breakthrough infections, but you're not dying.
Right.
So we need to get this across to the people who keep telling us that, the science doesn't know what it's talking about because you need a booster and you can still get COVID. Yeah, but you're not dying.
Right.
If we can get everybody vaccinated, we can have the mortality rate that's equivalent to those who have been vaccinated today, we would not have a problem with COVID any longer. The death rate would be lower than the flu, the seasonal flu.
That's right. That's right. And people who avoid that reality welcome the damage done because they believe it will always be done to other people. Thanks so much for the call, Steve. We'll be back right after this. I'm Hal Sparks filling in for Joan Esposito on WCPT. WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Oh my God. There's this weird noise in my headphone. You could probably hear, maybe, I don't know, it's super quiet, but it's basically like a cycle hum or something that is brand new and really annoying. And it's just only in my ear. Hopefully you guys don't hear it, but that's why I have to listen to the audio source for the callers from a totally different board, because that's just awful. So between this show and my show, I will take a short break and come back a little bit later. Yes, I'm hearing voices. My own, unfortunately. I will take a short 5-minute break to restart the computers and stuff, or 5 or 8. Usually takes about 8 minutes. In between today's radio show where I'm filling in for Joan and my stream, just so everybody knows.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just talking to my chat room. Fear not. Mm-hmm. Guest is echoing, not me. Okay. Okay. Going to enable the compressor for Chicago, and hopefully that brings it all within normal levels. I hope. We shall see.
Crossing my fingers.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah.
$30 seconds.
Thank you. Maybe, just maybe. Well, no. There, yeah. Trying something else.
She hear the 5-second liner.
I just barely heard it. Just barely.
Coming back.
Yes, thank you. Excellent.
You're back.
Welcome back. I'm Hal Sparks filling in for Joan Esposito. She's going to be back on Monday. Fear not, but I'm here doing my level best to handhold us through the total lack of Joan that we have on this Friday. And I, of course, will have my regular show, the Hal Sparks radio program, Megaworldwide, that's on WCPT every Saturday. Please join us. You can listen to us on the radio. You can live stream us at infotainmentwars.com or fwank.com, FWANQ, of course. patreon.com. And if you want to support the show, patreon.com/HalSparks, or you can Venmo me if you're watching the live stream. That helps a lot. Or if you join on Twitch, if you got one of those kids in your house that likes the twitching, then you can join Twitch using Amazon Prime. If you have an Amazon account, it doesn't cost you a dime. You can help the show out just by subscribing on Twitch. Isn't that nice? That makes it so much easier than me doing lots of commercials. I can just do a short one like this one. Hi. So I think we have other callers too. Let's see who we have, Lady B. Who's up next?
Peter.
Oh, excellent. Peter, welcome.
Hey, Hal.
Hi.
I'm a regular listener to the Saturday morning show when I'm out doing my neighborhood stroll as Lord of the Squirrels.
Right.
But, I'm kind of surprised, given your personal connection to Donald Rumsfeld, that you haven't talked much about him since his death.
Well,
and you know what the connection is, don't you?
Oh, well, he went to my high school, and I, amongst other members of other alumni from my school, there was a period where New Trier, our high school, was going to put a bust of him, allegedly, in front of the school. And a bunch of alumni, including myself, let's just say, to be friendly, balked at the idea and registered our complaints. So,
it would have lasted a matter of hours.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, yeah, that is absolutely true.
I'll bet you.
Go ahead.
I'll bet you I have done way more time in Breakfast Club than you have. There's no way you've done more time in Breakfast Club than I have.
That's only true because while I was there, at the height of my being a troubled student, I also won the funniest teenager in Chicago contest, and therefore was sort of a local celebrity because of it. And it's very hard to put that kid in detention. So I basically joked my way out of it. That said, I spent a decent amount of time in it and was nearly expelled. So I actually had an expulsion hearing. So I might actually be one notch above you in that. So I
had a hearing to get back in. And Dean Wellington told me come back with a psychiatrist and a lawyer, so I might be one up on you there.
Well, I had one of the school shrinks at New Trier. We're just gonna. It's like we're on the ship. It's like we're on the ship in Jaws, and we're comparing scars. But I had the psychologist. The psychologist they paired me with at New Trier to kind of talk to me about what would be my issues. Quit. He quit. He just quit. He just I had 2 sessions with me, and he took up an entirely different line of work. I think he became Amish and makes wood burning stoves. So we both have done some fine work in the New Trier district.
Get this. Someone else from New Trier. His name is Mark Patopoulos. He was well known on Broadway, and he has the same birthday as you, September 25th.
Well, there you go.
Brother. He unfortunately moved on. He moved on to the next life in '91 after a valiant battle with AIDS. But we have a multi-level connection. But as far as Don Rumsfeld goes, a lot of people haven't talked too much about what part of the catastrophe, the stupefying disaster of Iraq he played in. By orchestrating this misinformation campaign where
the known knowns group and known knowns, known unknowns, unknown knowns, and unknown unknowns, right? Is that's the 4 things that we knew?
Yeah, and what a lot of people don't realize is where Iraq ran off the rails was they had no plan for what's called Phase 4. Phase 4 was after you occupied a country, what do you do with it? And they had no plan. Remember what his other famous remark? I've never seen so many bases before. When all the guys were looting all the antiquities and running around with bases.
Yes.
And then when they tried to control it, they sent in to Fallujah, where there was an uprising. Instead of sending military police, they sent, first line combat Marines, and what are they trying to do? Shoot people. So they shot up all these people in Fallujah, which really poured kerosene on the fire that turbocharged the Iraqi insurrection, and it was all downhill from there.
Right.
And,
well, the idea was.
Yes,
I think one of the good things about being a new Trier graduate is, or at least someone who went there, I'm not going to presume that you graduated. You may have been shipped off to some sort of state institution for all I know at this point. And they would have been wise probably to do the same with me. But one of the things you don't fear is complexity. And the reality is that both getting into, staying in, and getting out of Afghanistan all had their own levels of complexity, all varying, parts constantly being juggled. And one of them being that Afghanistan is not a country. It is a territory defined by where other countries end, where they no longer want to go forward, where Iran literally said, you know what, everything past that area, you can have it. And the Pakistanis said, everything over those ridges, you can have them. There's nothing there. We don't want it. And years later, they're like, there's poppies, there's lithium. Yeah, you can keep that too. Bye. And we knew this, but the idea was, if you know that there's no natural resource, this is not a resource war. This isn't the war for oil stuff that we heard about Iraq, who had functioning oil fields and the like. Afghanistan is, and this is why the Russians wanted it too, was some sort of illusion that you could stage from there. You could set up bases in the middle of nowhere. There's hardly anybody around anyways, and you could repel them, if you have a wanton disregard for human life and nobody's paying attention, which fits the Russian model. It does not fit the United States model. And this was the part that everybody who supported the Afghan situation always came up against, that the idea that we could never take this place. Well, we would never want to, for one, and we absolutely could, but it would mean murdering people, millions of people, for no reason. And to claim territory we don't want, other than to have a base in the middle of nowhere so that we can attack other people that we have no business attacking. So the people were, every time we turned around with the Afghanistan war, somebody was trying to put another knot on the hands of whoever was trying to get out. Everybody who wanted to get out, somebody wanted to tie their hands in a brand new way. And ultimately, we find ourselves in a situation where, like that reporter who was presenting his plan for, couldn't we have done it this way? Literally shooting down his own idea as it came out of his mouth, because it's so clearly dumb. And that ultimately the answer is not that, maybe that way would have worked, but there would have been deaths, there would have been destruction, and it may not have functioned anyways. That's true of every possibility. Believe me, there are people in the Department of Defense and everywhere else, and their entire job is, Tompkins, go figure out what happens if aliens land on Guam and attack the west coast of the United States. That's your job for the next 6 weeks. All they do is contingency plans. And there is a contingency plan that equates to every dumb thought that every reporter thinks is their magic bullet to get out of Afghanistan secretly with no deaths. Donald Trump yesterday, and I brought this up, was on Sebastian Gorga's thing, saying that his plan was to leave, take all the people out. All of our people get out. Our civilians first. And that doesn't mean just embassy personnel. All the people, all the Americans who are, I guess, even the ones who don't want to go. We're going to throw nets over them, snatch them up. Those people leave. Then we destroy all the gear, blow up all the bases, and then we pull the soldiers out, who presumably will, thumb a ride with the Taliban to the Pakistani border. I don't know how they get out after you've blown up the airfields and all the gear, but I'm mad. I would love to see his crayon drawings of how that happened. But then, in the middle of all this nonsense, of this plan that he supposedly had that would have worked great, and even though the material situation on the ground has not changed in the last 4 years at all, he never implemented it, never did anything with it. Brilliant plan. Brilliant plan. We'd have snuck out, nobody would have known we were gone. We would have blown up all the gear that allegedly, which technically isn't ours, belongs to the Afghan military, was there to support the whole Afghan military. And if we'd have blown it all up, they would have fallen to the Taliban even faster. Oh, that's right. Somebody in the chat room just reminded me, forts, not bases. He wanted to blow up the forts. And then in the middle of this ridiculous fantasy plan that he had, which entails us sending in helicopters, I suppose, into terrorist regions because there are no runways anymore, to get all of our soldiers out. I don't know how big these helicopters he's going to send in, depending on the size of the target you want for surface-to-air missiles from the Taliban, ISIS, remnants of Al-Qaeda, and even just random anti-American sociopaths that have found a home there over the years. We're going to send helicopters in to lift our last 2,500 soldiers out in helicopters that carry, 8 to 16 people in them each? For how long does that happen? How many of those are coming in? It's kind of a noisy way to get your last remnants out if you're sneaking everybody out. And then, in the middle of this ridiculous assertion about his power and greatness as a leader in carrying out a plan he supposedly had that was perfect, but he still didn't use it even when he could have, we're still going to keep Bagram Air Force Base. That's what he said yesterday. We were going to, his plan entailed us keeping Bagram Air Force. We're going to keep Bagram Air Force Base. We're going to keep it with no staff and no military and no gear. What are we going to do? Just have a plane circle it and anybody steps foot on it, we just nuke it from the air? It was the goofiest, most ridiculous, embarrassing statement from him yet about Afghanistan, and that's saying a lot. There was never a good way, a safe way to get out of Afghanistan that would not entail Americans getting killed and danger on the ground for everyone involved. There was never a plan to do it. There was never a realistic system for doing anything like it. And you know how I know that? Because if there was, Trump would have done it. If there was a politically expedient, quiet way to do it without no harm, no foul, sneak away, you don't think Trump would have pulled that trigger 2 years ago and patted himself on the back? Are you out of your mind? We got to take a break. I went way over the break. I apologize. But that just aggravates me. It just gets dumber all the time. And when you have the folks that helped talk us into Afghanistan and stay there for the last 20 years suddenly get all mad because it's awful the way we're leaving, as if that's worse somehow than staying and staying and staying and staying and staying and staying and staying. And none of them are clamoring for us to invade Yemen. None of us are saying we need to set up a base in the Congo in between ISIS and Boko Haram. So where else do you go with that? We got to take a break. We'll be back. That's a noisy thing. Cool. Maybe this monitor device goes to here. And Firefox. Mm-hmm. Very strange. All right, we'll figure it out. Hi, I'm looking at my stuff. Somebody bit me. I think at the house. I have 2 bug bites right on my arm. Look at that. Annoying. Happens. If I'm scratching, that's why. Let's see. And chat, yeah, I'm trying to figure out their reasoning to want to impeach Biden. Because they think you can throw impeachment around randomly. Can we get a 5 eggs during the break? I insist. As a matter of fact, we'll do it coming out of the break. I'll do it on the show. We might as well introduce Joan's audience to 5 eggs.
We're coming back in 15 seconds.
Okay. Excellent. So yeah, I hear a slapback echo on what's coming from I think, oh, maybe I know what it is. Okay, stream mix. There we go. Hopefully this was maybe.
Get back.
Okay. Welcome back. I got a request from my chat room at infotainmentwars.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Join today. I mean, come on. You can become a member. You can super chat. You can support the show in many, many, many different ways. And it just shows what a decent human being you are and how much you want to support this kind of this side of the political spectrum, as it were, which doesn't, quite frankly, get as much support as the future Rush Limbaughs of America that are getting their entire salary paid by the Heritage Foundation and the Koch brothers so that they can just eat the whatever ad rev they get in the form of I think 30,000 oxycodone pills and Viagra. Depends on whether you're flying to the Dominican Republic or not, I suppose. And if you're a purist, but we don't get the kind of support that say Mike Lindell is giving to the folks like Diamond and Silk. And if you don't know, if you ever, sending out a 5 eggs to everybody in the chat room. The concern with if you're not aware of this, is that of all the things that have gone wrong, from Havana syndrome to the rise of communism in Cuba, the most concerning thing for Diamond and Silk is that Cubans allegedly only get 5 eggs a month.
5 eggs in a month.
And apparently that is not enough for them.
Eat 2 eggs a day.
They eat 2 eggs a day, just so you know. So
5 eggs
is a tragedy. So five eggs per person per household, and it's probably not even true. But never mind the fact that this seems to be the big concern. So five eggs. This is your brain on 5 eggs, essentially. Yes, there's an egg police that come around.
5 eggs.
They find you with a chicken. They will take away your eggs. They will squeeze your chicken until there's only 5 eggs left. And
5 eggs.
What? Now, we're going to take more callers in a moment. But on multiple fronts right now, the economy recovering, whether or not the infrastructure bill will pass, and it will, by the way, just for the record, just letting you know, it's going to pass. Whether or not, inflation will come down, it is. Inflation is currently, went down last month, and it's going to stabilize and will be kind of a new norm for the next, at its level. It will not continue to rise. It will stabilize for the next 5 months, and then it will start to go down again as the supply chains that have been bottlenecked by COVID in that good old supply and demand system is going to loosen up a little bit, and there's going to be a lot of backlog, and prices are going to go down because there's going to be a lot of stuff left over. There is a lot of back and forth in Trumpistan currently about mask mandates. You've got crazy people showing up at school board meetings, screaming their heads off. One guy actually assaulting a teenage girl who, now she reached out and slapped his phone out of his hand when he was filming her. And so folks on the right are saying, well, he just, he hit her because she hit his phone first. She's a minor on school grounds where she's supposed to be. He's a grown man on school grounds unlawfully. So therein lies the rub. But this is a commonality. This is a regular part of the Trump world right now. And as much as we're talking about, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which passed the House, but will certainly have difficulty in the Senate, I think there's actually hope for a pared down version of it that solves most of the problems that can't be solved through litigation, and a bunch of them will, by the way, across the states, and what the Republicans are trying between now and 2022. The reality is that Republicans are facing a problem in their voting bloc that is twofold. One is a lot of their voters, thanks to Donald John Trump, do not trust the voting process at all. They are not. Why would you bother to vote if the fix is in? The Dems run everything. Who is going to motivate you to go out and stand in line or re-register to vote when you move, or make sure that you check all the boxes and cross all the T's and dot all the I's that are necessary with the new voter laws that your red district is putting in place to fight voter fraud in an area where, believe me, the Democrats are going to make sure that all the people on their side of the aisle are going to have everything available to them that they will need to vote, whether it's a photo ID, or whether if they need a notary republic going door to door, stamping people's votes, the Democrats are going to do it. All these voting laws, as awful as they are, not only is there a legislative fight to push back against these things, but believe me, the Democratic Party and the Democratic activists in all of these areas are absolutely going to do everything they have to do to make sure that every vote is counted, and make it as tough for the Republicans who want to change these rules as they possibly can. They are also going to, sue and file lawsuits against all the laws that are unconstitutional within each of these states and nationally. And many of those lawsuits will be successful, partly because they're just right on a constitutional level, but also partly because the laws that are being written with crayons and hammers, as Republicans are wont to do. They're as legally and stout as Trump's executive orders. That is the primary way that they are going. As much as they're pushing this stuff, their voters don't trust voting, and Democrats are going to thread the needle inside of any of these stupid laws that they try to present. On the other side, Republicans are killing their own voters by being anti-mask and anti-vaccine and equating vaccine hesitancy with freedom. The vast numbers of deaths in this country are straight up MAGA supporters, are Trump's own followers. The people that would show up at his super spreader events. And those people's lives aren't the only ones affected when they die. They die. Their entire family is affected. And in some cases, there will be people who, when their relative dies of this, will simply be traumatized, disheartened, and will remove themselves from any kind of expression of public life. They're just not going to vote. They're just going to avoid it. And then the rest of the family is going to go, you know what? I may not agree with everything the Democrats are doing, but they damn sure didn't take part in the death of my dad, my mom, my cousin, my brother, my uncle, my friend. We'll be back after this break. I'm Hal Sparks, filling in for Joan Esposito. Fabulous. Okay. Let's see. Excellent. Let's see if this works now. We hope so, or it will eventually. Let me see if I'm going to switch to this, switch back to this, and then hopefully... Mm-hmm. Okay. Now it's there. In theory. Huh. All right. Figure it out. I've got this thing up, but I'm trying to figure out some of these. There you go. Works over here, but somehow over here, not so interested in working. Very curious little thing. Okay. There we go. Now it works. Just in case I need this guy later. Hold on. Let's see if I can find it. This fella.
What?
Just in case I need that. Cool. And we're back in a couple minutes.
U.S. service. Yes, about 2:40, 2 minutes and 30.
Well, echoey. Oh, I see. Gotcha. You mentioned Trump, so I figure we need the old-fashioned Trumpleweed coming through. Now, I may not have to... If the audio works, well, I still got to check my audio on this side. Why I'm getting that weird double sound, slap back. And there's no particular reason for it. It's just very curious to me. It's a crisscross between the Elgato and the Rodecaster, and they're just arguing. Twitch audio is fine. That's good to know. It is directly out of the software in a way that doesn't go, you know, I mean, I guess there could be a restream reason, but I can't imagine why. It seems odd. Finally getting some cooling rains in New York City. Oh, guess what? Get ready for a harsh winter, kids. Is that us back, Lady B? I think we are. Well,
no, that's the traffic. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's right.
It off.
Okay, cool. I'm totally hearing like a double audio of you on there. I'm not quite sure why. Can you send me a little bit of audio and so I can see where that's coming in?
Laycock Road down to the junction 42, now 15 on the flip.
Wow.
Kennedy outbound, pretty brutal from Chicago Avenue out to Canfield. 41 to the split, 43 in the express, power 8 to the airport.
That's ridiculous.
Inbound from over here at 50 to 3 minutes. Ike outbound, a couple of crashes, one at Western, one at Cross.
I took it off.
Let's see. Monitor off. Let's see if that does it. Man. Okay.
15 seconds.
So much better. Okay, got it. All right. Gee whiz.
Show this video live, local, and progressive. Affiliate today for Joan, live from Chicago. Media and multimedia personality, Al Sparks.
Oh, yeah. And I am excited to be here. Thanks for having me and Joan and everybody at CPT. By the way, my show will be on at its regular time tomorrow. And I will be, I have no doubt we will have plenty of news about the constant shifting narrative around Afghanistan and the reality on the ground in dealing with it. Now, I want to grab some more callers because if I don't, I will get off into another tangent where I yammer the entire entire segment. So I have a lot of stuff I want to talk about in my next live stream, which will be right after this show. I will be live streaming on my regular channel. I will continue my regular live stream. It basically ends right when we're done. So I will roll directly into that and have a lot of clips and audio and comedy and silliness for you. But one of the things I want to touch on especially is the fact that more and more people at least are becoming aware that ISIS and the Taliban are mortal enemies. And I would like that to just germinate in your thoughts for a while. And this isn't even conjecture. ISIS and the Taliban had been at war since 2015. There's no debate about this. They are, and it is a bloody, in-civil war. So every time you hear stuff about what's going on with the Taliban and ISIS and what things are going to be like in Afghanistan and all that, understand that. Just keep that in your mind as a genuine fact that no one disputes. Yes, a lot of the Taliban call ISIS Daesh. Yeah, somebody in the chat room brought that up as well, which is a derogatory term. It's fairly common over there. You should hear the nicknames they have for the Saudi royal family. But let's take some more calls before I get, buried in that as well. So who do we have on the line, Lady B?
I have Roosevelt.
Oh, excellent. We love Roosevelt. Hey, Roosevelt, welcome.
Hey, how you doing, Al? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Here, I'm going to tell you something, and you can correct me if you can. This guy's the worst deal maker I've ever seen. And remember,
who?
He said,
Who?
Trump. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Trump. Okay. Remember he said that the Chinese tariffs, that the Chinese were going to give us all these billions and billions of dollars?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I distinctly remember an article on Forbes saying that led to $51 billion annually. It costs us more money.
Right.
This guy is anti-American, the worst deal maker, and the most anti-American traitor. And I'm calling him a traitor. And there's a reason for it. And I'm going to go rapid fire here, as rapid as I can be. Okay, so that's one example. Remember he went to Helsinki and he turned his back on our intelligence. 17 different government intelligence said that Russians interfered with our 2016 election. However, he took the word of a killer. He took the word of Putin. He took the word of Russia. Okay?
Right. Yep.
Now, remember he said that he was a war president and he was going to do away with COVID and all that? Well, that led to the fact that he didn't believe in masks, he didn't believe in giving us information. So what happened? Our economy tanked because he let this thing go on. Not to mention all the variants that we have now thanks to him. And there were 400,000 casualties thanks to him. Okay?
Yes.
Nigeria, there were 4 soldiers that got killed. It took them 12 days to react to that, and there was never an investigation, and he insulted one of the soldiers' widows by not remembering the soldier's name. Okay? Now, when it comes down to the Afghanistan, okay?
Yep.
He and Pompeo had said that they didn't wait. Right before leaving, he said, before the elections in November, he says there is no more Taliban. We don't know. As a matter of fact, even Pence, there is no more Taliban. We're done with them. You know, we did them in. Him and Pompeo and Pence. Let's see. I got it written down here.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. And so then when it came down to North Korea, remember he tweeted, he says, people, sleep soundly. I remember distinctly reading his tweet when he did have a Twitter account, saying, sleep sound because there's no more nuclear weapons. North Korea is going to disarm. Okay? So that's another failure. Every single thing he touched, it went against the middle class. Oh, and not to mention the taxes. The deal that he struck for us, for the American people, he made permanent taxes for the rich and
for corporations, for corporations, and even quote unquote rich Americans, theirs was temporary. Individual tax break was temporary. It had a sunset clause. The corporate one, permanent. And, and permanent just means until we actually change it again. So it doesn't revert back. That's how they, that's the trick that they play. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's even worse than that. He talks a lot about his great Chinese trade deal and China didn't give us 10 cents and yada, yada, yada. That whole storyline, that phase 1 of that alleged 3-phase trade deal that he was doing with the Chinese was for approximately $33 billion in goods last year. I don't know about the Forbes $50 billion, but the legit what they eventually came to is about $30 billion worth of stuff. And Trump sold them the largest order, he keeps touting this, of beef, corn, and soybeans in American history. Now, granted, that's 4 years of backed up stuff because they weren't buying because of COVID. So there was they had a desire for that amount. It still only amounted them, they did one phase of a 3-phase deal and they only bought 1/3 worth of the stuff that they said they were going to buy in the first phase. So it was 1/3 of 1/3. And afterwards, he's like, afterward, I just didn't feel great about the deal anymore because, COVID made me feel differently about the whole thing. Well, apparently only in terms of his relations to the Chinese, because in terms of the American people, he continues to just tout the fact that he thinks he invented the vaccine, even though he downplayed it and talked up ridiculous anecdotal solutions the entire time. I mean, short of sticking a light bulb up your rectum and drinking bleach, his solutions weren't gaining steam. He was just hoping to be, that money could buy our way out of it. So therefore, he, like the pandemic response team that he assembled and the House and the Senate both said, look, if there becomes a vaccine, we want plenty of supply for the country. So we will prepay all these companies. This was all in the bills. This wasn't his idea. It wasn't the task force. They didn't have this idea to stock up and pay ahead of time. And Pfizer and Moderna weren't part of Operation Warp Speed. They just took the money to pre-buy it, but they weren't part of the development process. They went off on their own. They just said, we'll let you know what our process is like, and the FDA can judge our findings. Johnson & Johnson rode shotgun the whole time, went with an old school format, and was involved in it, and is the only one that had to be paused because of health concerns. And ultimately, we find out that Pfizer, just like Johnson & Johnson, does not require the kind of refrigeration they initially thought it did. So yes, he's the worst deal maker ever. He's terrible at his job, except for the fact that he manages to benefit himself and his family out of it, because a little lesson for any Americans who think electing a businessman, not somebody who has a business, but someone who calls themselves a businessman in the future, try and find one that actually has a genuine board of directors and stockholders, because at least they have a history of being answerable to someone else. If you run a giant bloated family business that your dad's dad created at this point, that was based on grift and racist renting policies to the point where they were attacked by the Department of Justice had to go after them. If that's your way of saying, I'm a businessman, I know what America needs, when you've never had to answer to anybody else but whoever, your accountant going, we can't hide that much money. You got to buy a piece of fake property and burn it to the ground. All right, we'll buy one and burn it. Where are we getting it? That if you're going to pick a business person, pick one that has stockholders next time, please. Can you try it? I mean, if you're going to make that mistake again, at least make it in those narrow confines. We got to take a break. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it, Roosevelt. And you are absolutely correct, my friend. Not a single thing. By the way, has anybody else noticed that the wall doesn't work? Because if you listen to the right, oh my God, the border's overrun. The border, oh my God, everybody's pouring across the border. So the wall, which was supposed to solve it all, nah, not so much. We'll be back.
Be sure to follow WCPT.
All right. We are blazing through. Kansas man dies waiting for ICU bed as hospitals fill up with COVID-19 patients. Kansas man with non-COVID related condition died this week after being forced to wait for an ICU bed because they are full of coronavirus patients. After Rob Van Pelt went to a local hospital for a routine procedure last Tuesday, his heart suddenly stopped. He was then airlifted to a Wichita hospital, but doctors said he needed to go to another facility with a neurological intensive care unit. Hospital staff reached out for a place that could take him. Due to COVID-19, the waiting list for beds is unknown. Van Pelt's family wrote at the time on a fundraising page seeking to help with medical expenses. With COVID-19 cases spiking, on Friday, medical staff started the process of getting Van Pelt transferred to a hospital in Oklahoma City, but that fell through. According to the Star's report, later in the day, bed opened up in Essentia via Christie St. Francis in Wichita, and he was transferred. More than 90 COVID patients. Ascension Hospital converted some of its neurological ICU beds into beds for COVID patients. His wife reported on Sunday that he had died. Summer Van Pelt said that she will never know if anything would have changed medically had he been able to get to a bed earlier, but that with the access to the care he needed, he could have been monitored with the right equipment. She urged people to get vaccinated and wear a mask. With already unseasonably high overall patient volumes, it is adding to the challenge to finding the right bed with the right staff at the right time for every patient referred to us for care. Unvaccinated U.S. school teacher spread COVID to 26 people. Lovely. Oh, folks, these people. Georgia cop who pushed people to take horse dewormer instead of vaccine dies from COVID. Captain at the Wayne County Sheriff's Office, who promoted anti-vaccination propaganda on his Facebook page, has died from COVID. Local news station WSAV reports that Captain Joe Manning died this week at the age of 57 after what Sheriff Chuck Mosley described as a brief battle with COVID-19. Captain Manning was an integral part of our family, and our hearts are broken. Our love and prayers go forward to his family. Manning, who's survived by his wife, 3 children, and 8 grandchildren, God damn it, frequently posted anti-vaccine messages on his Facebook page. On August 14th, for instance, Manning posted a meme that stated, if we lose on vaccines, we will completely lose our right to sovereignty over our own bodies. That very same day, he informed his friend, Wayne Feed and Seed has some liquid and passed Ivermectin. Get it while supplies last. Some conservatives recently have been promoting taking horse deworming medicine that contains ivermectin, even though it is not designed to treat the deadly virus.
Coming back.
Thank you. Let's see if I can find this.
Joe Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Affiliate today for Joe, live from Chicago. Media and multimedia personality, all stars.
There's a lot of reasons not to take things like ivermectin to treat your COVID. And I mean, the main one being this, that's not what it's for. And especially if you get it from a feed and grain store, it's the kind of dosage you would give to a horse. But also because it will, does anybody remember when they added Olestra to potato chips? We found something to replace the fat in potato chips, and it's this grease-like substance that it makes the mouth feel of chips very similar to what you would use, what you're used to. Apparently, the butt feel on it was completely different, though. And if you'll recall, there was a lot of what they called anal leakage caused by Olestra. The uncontrollable evacuation of waste products from yourself at the most inopportune of times. And there's apparently a bunch of folks on Twitter and, of course, on Telegram and all the right-wing Getter, which is, if you're not familiar, is a right-wing version of Twitter, except without any safety protocols and a lot of child porn and ISIS propaganda, because they're absolute free speechists. So it doesn't matter who you are. Thank you, Benny Loco, reminding everybody to give everybody a thumbs up in the chat room. If you can give us a thumbs up, that'd be great. By the way, as many people may or may not know, we are very troll friendly at this particular show, as long as you're not a racist, hypocritical, sexist, egotistical bigot. You can say your piece, just watch your language, because no matter what you say in our chat room, it benefits the algorithm. We can always bounce you if you use bad words, but and it should be relatively automatic. Most of the protocols are fairly well set up, although don't test them just to be a punk. But the nice thing is, and this is my message, by the way, to all my fellow progressive talk show hosts and liberal talk shows: welcome the trolls. Come on, because first of all, trolling does not have the impact it used to have. It just doesn't. It does. There's nobody. You don't feel it the way you used to. Remember in 2010 when you got trolled, it was like, owie, that hurt my feelings. And now you're like, oh, okay, this may not even be a person. I might be being insulted by a chatbot. So now it doesn't really carry it. But if people sit there and hate watch your show, again, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook don't care. They really don't. They don't care why you're watching, just that you're watching. And also, if you bother to type anything, oh my God, they love it. Even if what you type is awful, you draw attention to whatever show you're doing from the algorithm standpoint, going, wow, this show is engaging, to use a favorite big tech word. And then, of course, no matter if you give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, it still draws attention to the show. I can't tell you, there's no such thing as bad press when it comes to trolling and tech. So there you go. And we want to thank the trolls that are here, who are, trying to convince everyone to stick horse paste up their keister, and I guess eat flowers to stave off COVID. All of it, by the way, is ridiculous and dangerous and silly, but still amusing when they're surrounded by, people who know better. So there you go. That's right. So, and we appreciate the reach of it as well. The other thing I don't think people recognize is that if you watch the show and you wouldn't normally watch the show, you actually transport the show through the algorithm, through the magic of computers, to everywhere else that you watch. So anybody who watches what you watch will also get a recommendation to watch this show. And that is why we've gotten 2,000 new YouTube subscribers just in the last week and a half. That's amazing. Last year, when I started this show, we were fighting to break 5,000. Remember that, kids? Now we're at 22K, and they're all legit human beings. And you know how I know that? It's because I get a good portion of those people watching the shortened videos that I post and all that kind of stuff. That's a good sign. That's a good sign. One of these days, I will talk Stephanie Miller over to the YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook world and away from Free Speech TV, where she will share a network with Sebastian Gorka or something, which is ridiculous. But there you have it. So thanks, guys. Don't forget, thumbs up, like, and subscribe. And, of course, tune in tomorrow for my show, if you would so choose, if you're listening on the radio in Chicago. There, I said it. And we got 5 minutes before we have to take this break, so let's take a call. Who do we have, Lady B? I know we have somebody. We gotta.
Yes, we do. We have Jim from Chicago.
Excellent. Hey, Jim, thanks for holding.
Hey, I'm just thinking about the Archduke assassination when the shelter made a wrong turn and tried to assassinate. They plugged them in front of the coffee shop where he stopped for a sandwich. Led to probably the First World War and the blueprint for the Second World War. Fast forward to 2000, when Gore is cheated out of the election, the votes aren't counted correctly. He goes to the Supreme Court. The Federalist Society he puts Bush in as president. And the point is, we overreacted the whole thing. It turned the Patriot Act turns into a demonstration of police, a surveillance society. The only was made with private contractors, the guys that made all the money in Afghanistan, and the big corporations that sell Raytheon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you see how it twinges on one incident.
Yeah, except I think it's fascinating though. I'm glad you bring it up or whatever. But there is a confusion point that keeps hitting me, is that in the criticism of Joe Biden by people, especially further left of him, also is paired with the fact that Raytheon and Boeing and all these people are making money in Afghanistan when he's the guy bringing it to an end. And I find that quite curious because
it should have been ended. It should have never started to begin with.
I agree. This was the guy who, by the way, Biden was against the surge. Right, but that
absolutely it should have been. Yeah, but I mean, there were better minds. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn, for instance, in Britain, was deadly against it. Actually, we had one girl in the House of Black woman who was against it. I mean, but those, it's just like Vietnam. They don't prevail. You know, the people that see around the corner don't seem to prevail. And then we suffer for 20, 30 years of this.
There's a couple of There's a couple of other issues with that as well. Is that wars used to be fought largely on this idea of kind of attrition. That that politics didn't enter into the planning and execution of war for quite a long time, with the exception of tell you what, I'll give you my oldest daughter if you just stop fighting, and those levels of exchanges, or we'll marry into this family so the war can come to an end. That level of stuff. But as far as like polling the public to see how they feel about it was unheard of. Whereas now that is a major factor. And when you look at military strategy about how to deal with a threat or how to seize resources, depending on which side you're looking at it from, the strategy involved in that has another layer on top of it in the modern era that largely is based on the concept that we are a democracy and everybody has a say in it. And as much as I, love the wagging of the fist at the military-industrial complex, it is an oversimplification of the reality on the ground, and it also lets a lot of us off the hook for it. And I don't think that's fair. So, at a certain point, who is the bigger fool, the fool or the fool who follows them? And none of us are following the military-industrial complex into war in this situation. And we have to be able to make deeper and more clear decisions in the future. And ultimately, I think Biden gets the credit, considering everyone's concerns about the military-industrial complex, for getting us out. We'll be back. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. I'm gonna start. Only got a half hour, so I'm usually at this point during the day prepping for my regular show, getting my clips in order and stuff, and setting them up. So I can't stop lying. I'm like, no double duty today. Don't feel that we need to, cut any special, clips out of this craziness. Okay, this is good. Oh yeah. Where's Carl, is that on YouTube? Carl's asking me. Yeah. The thing that you're seeing that you are having to block. See if I can. We'll do it live. How do you take requests for goofy Republican? Let's see. Take requests for goofy Republican ex-mob rats to react to. Yeah, sure. I mean, the important thing is that I don't want to see it ahead of time. The clip itself. That's right. Saturday, September 25th is on a Saturday this year, 52 years. So I will be on the air on my birthday doing my show, and I will be in Washington, D.C. doing it. Thanks for letting me know, Carl. I just saw your message. Fox is closer to fire user. Yipe. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm just setting some stuff up, guys. Hi, everybody. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay. Cool. Whole lot of derping going on over there on
You still have 2 callers left.
Okay, great. Thank you. Why is there... Okay.
That's traffic. I'm your Rita Badges.
WCPT 820, where facts matter.
We're back. Welcome back to the show. I'm Hal Sparks filling in for Joan Esposito. We got a couple more callers on the line, so let's grab them right away. Who do we have, Lady B?
Mary from Elk Grove.
Excellent. Hi, Mary. Welcome.
Hey, Hal. Great to hear you on Joan's show.
Thank you.
I just wanted to share a nugget of information that I have here. I recently got a letter from my insurance company. We have a small business. And my insurance company, Cincinnati, I got a letter and says, your general liability will include a communicable disease exclusion. Your umbrella liability will include a communicable disease exclusion, which basically means
right.
they're not covering COVID.
Right.
So things are changing here.
Yeah.
I don't know if health insurance companies can do that, but businesses, they're not going to cover it. So
right.
if any of my employees or whatnot, they're not covering it. And it's been floating around,
right.
private
yeah.
businesses, they're going to change things.
Yeah. Well, this is it's very scary, which is why they're like leaning towards, that's one of the ways that they're getting towards, companies starting to cover people who are vaccinated but you need to get vaccinated if you're going to get some sort of general liability coverage on a business at this point, or you're at least going to have to take care of it because at a certain point, the government money's going to run out. They know this, and they're getting ahead of this because they got to set a policy for next year. And if we start getting into the Echo variant or the Guilfoyle variant, or the haphazard variant, there's gonna be a real need for treating people, and this is expensive care. Let's not forget that while these people are also clogging up beds, they're using every device in the hospital that isn't going to someone else. They are doing everything but full dialysis on their blood nonstop. It's terrible.
You're talking millions of dollars per stay.
Right.
$1 million per stay. And Delta recently came out with they're
airlines
charging unvaccinated. Yeah, Delta Airlines are charging $200. I think it's monthly for their employees who are not vaccinated on their health insurance. Because, get vaccinated, folks.
Yeah, it is.
Cost you.
It's brutal, and it's sad that it has to come to this. But at a certain point,
very sad.
This is like when during the ACA. The ACA, everybody's against it. Like keep your government hands off my Medicare, and I don't want this. There's going to be death panels and all this. There's going to start rationing care and yada yada. And none of these people put on a medallion that they hung around their neck or wore a bracelet that said, "Do not resuscitate or do not treat me for any disease I don't have enough cash on hand to deal with." None of them did that. They all wanted every ounce of freedom and their being away from tyranny. But the minute they got sick, they went straight to the hospital, racked up all these medical bills, and then hung them on the taxpayer because they got to get paid somehow. And again, this isn't even about the money aspect of it. You look at the resources that are wasted in this circumstance because these are machines that are hooked up to this person that are not hooked up to somebody else. And we've had multiple reports we just mentioned today where people are dying because there aren't available ICU beds and there aren't available, one guy needed a neurological suite that was being used as ICU for COVID patients.
And we all heard the story about the Dallas County official in Texas who came out and said that if your child needs an ICU bed, you will have to wait until another child dies.
Yes, what a horrifying notion. And how? And this is the pro-life family values crowd. Remember that garbage?
So family. Oh yes, pro-life, pro-life. Until that is pushed out.
We value your family until there's only one person left. And then we will scream at them because they wore a mask and got vaccinated as traitors who are willing to be microchipped and are now magnetic. I'm just waiting for these idiots.
I don't know about you, Hal, but my internet and Wi-Fi in my house is running great.
It is. It's amazing. And I wish I was magnetic because it would make changing guitar strings a lot easier. You know what I mean? I could just lean over the guitar and I could put it in one end, and then while I'm setting up the tuner, I could just put the string against my forehead and it would stay there, and I could still look at what I was doing. It would be
look for my keys.
Yes, they would just be stuck to you. Yeah, or you might have to ask somebody to get it off your back if you lay down on the couch on them, and now they're, you ever have that problem after you've been vaccinated and turned magnetic, where your keys are stuck to the middle of your back, and you're like, can somebody get this for me?
True.
Yeah, but that's, of course, I have fingerprint locks on my house But then, of course, I find out that the vaccine's going to shift my DNA, and now my fingerprints are going to change, and then I won't be identifiable, and that's how they'll exclude me from Agartha, which, of course, is the Hollow Earth area where the last survivors who aren't taking the vaccine are going to go. It's amazing, isn't it? The way they've thought through every possibility. But my concern is, does that, your concern about like employees, it's hard to train up an employee to know what they're doing. You find a good employee, and everybody's got gaps in their reality. Every employee you have is going to be like, they can do their job, or you wouldn't have them there, but they might also be a little quirky. You know what I mean? They have their own little, I got to take every third Friday off because we deadhead, me and the wife go down and we see fish every time they perform an economo walk, and so, yeah, like, all right, I got to do a Comic-Con or a Ren Fair carve out for one of my employees, but they're so darn good with accounting, we let it slide. But when that quirk ends up being that they believe that horse paste will save them and they're not getting the vaccine, and now you've got to legitimately look between the cost it's going to be for your company for healthcare and passing out a piece of paper to all your employees that goes, look, your healthcare no longer covers infectious disease that you've been warned about. It doesn't, which is nuts, by the way, because you should be covered for infectious disease that you have no protection against, one would think, right? But in this case, they're making this kind of broad swath change. And then you've got to tell your employees this because you have and you might have to fire this employee who refused to get vaccinated and deal with lawsuits from them, which will fail but will cost you money. And then you also, on top of that, have to hire somebody new and train them up to be able to do the job that the person was doing. It's madness, and all in the name of freedom to die for your beliefs, for your Führer, for your Ubermensch. I don't get it.
We're lucky there.
Yes, we are. Yeah, well, good. I'm glad that at least in your business, maybe you don't run across that. But I don't doubt that there are people. I mean, there are nurses that aren't. My mom's a nurse. There are nurses that aren't getting vaccinated. So certain hospitals that need nurses can't hire them because they won't get vaccinated, and they have a rule. So and so they can be shorthanded, or they can bring somebody in who might bring the disease in. What do? You stay shorthanded is what happens. And people can very well die because this person doesn't want to do that. They want to do half their duty as a nurse. It's maddening. So I appreciate the call. And I know I'm more hopeful about a lot of people, more than a lot of people about this, because I actually do think the vast majority of people have gotten vaccinated, will get vaccinated, or want to get vaccinated. And these fringes will get smaller and smaller and more maddening. And they'll get louder, so we'll hear more about them on social media, and we'll hear more about them on the news that are trying to draw attention so they can sell more toilet paper. But in reality, your experience, person to person, going places, you'll run into fewer and fewer of them. So that I really do believe that, and that will and the medical advances that are coming from the finding a vaccine for this disease are actually going to help us with a lot of other ones. So that part's fascinating. I appreciate the call, I really do. Thanks for calling in. I'm Hal Sparks, filling in for Joan Esposito on this lovely Friday afternoon. My regular show will be on tomorrow, and she will be back on Monday. I'm going to take a break a little bit early just so that we can spend our last segment with a couple more callers. That'll make it a little bit easier, if that's all right, Lady B. We'll be back right after this. It's the Joan Esposito Show.
Wow.
Excellent. Dun, dun, dun. I'm stuck to my refrigerator for a week after I got the vaccine. It's stuff, but wasn't it lovely though to be that close to your kids' homework? The nice thing, the bad thing about being vaccinated is you stick to your fridge. The good news is you get to be reminded that your kid's an A student at Wilford Elementary. Why are they putting pickups on guitars? What's wrong with an ice-a-dance? Oh, I see.
No 20 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
ZipRecruiter for free, but you have to go to ZipRecruiter.com/free. Yes, free. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Thank you. Former CIA analyst Phil Mudd was on Jake Tapper on CNN, and CNN I guess they're trying to, they saw Marvel's success with the What If series. And it is spectacular. I think my favorite side series theirs is Loki, then WandaVision, then Falcon and Winter Soldier in that order. As a full-on Marvel head at this point, enjoying them. But the What If series is spectacular, done as a cartoon, and the possibility that, what if someone else was a certain superhero, or what if this had played out differently? And it's a fascinating creative enterprise, and it offers you some exciting possibilities in storytelling, and that's where CNN also seems that they will find some ratings
and so
success.
You have been saying now for some time that this withdrawal was going to be ugly and violent no matter when it happened.
Correct. Yes, if you look at the characteristics, whether you're President Obama or whether you're President Trump, and I'm seeing among my friends on Twitter already today critiques of what's happening. Let's look at characteristics. The Americans say they're going to get out. You could have bombed an American sort of military post before you got out to ensure that the Taliban couldn't access weapons and explosives. The Taliban then knows you're leaving. The Taliban's going to surge if they see that you're leaving. But in this circumstance, the Afghan National Army is going to see you're leaving. They're going to fold. That happened in this circumstance. As soon as you start leaving the airport, American citizens and people affiliated with the Americans are going to surge the airport because they know their throats are going to get slit by the Taliban. That's what's happening in this circumstance. And the biggest question, Jake, you're going to have to surge in the American military to get aircraft to take people out, and there's a big footprint and a big risk. You tell me whether you like Obama, whether you like Trump, whether you like Biden. You give me a better plan. I don't see it, Jake.
And Kim.
Right. So that was his long-winded way of saying, shut up, Jake Tapper. You are talking out of your rectum. Any situation, I would love, oh man, considering the armchair quarterbacking and the backseat driving that is part of this thing that has kept us in there for 20 years, where nobody was backseat driving it anymore after 2006. Nobody gave a crap. They just looked at the death count, shrugged it off. I guess we're in Afghanistan now. Guess what we do. And then, the last 12 years, nothing. And then we decide to get out, and everybody wants a piece of the strategy. Well, I would love to see this. And it has to happen immediately. It has to happen before we're out Tuesday. Jake Tapper, CNN, everybody there needs to call a round table, a think tank of CNN reporters that have been covering this issue for the last 10 years. And I want to hear their idea for the timetable and the strategy for exit. How many months it takes, how many weeks it takes, how many days it takes, when you would have started this year, and what would have happened. And that's exactly what he's saying. You show me a different plan. You got a different plan, I want to hear it, but I don't see it. There is no there. The minute we pull out the military first, everybody knows the military is going. Therefore, the embassies are going to have to go because the Taliban's going to take the country from the Afghans because we know that they're a paper tiger and they're not standing. Then you take out our diplomatic corps. That undermines the government. The government knows that we're not planning on dealing with them. We're removing our embassy because we don't think the government is going to be standing. We don't think there will be anybody to negotiate. We think the Taliban's going to take the country, which is a cue to the Taliban to take the country. There is no there. There is no way you exit this country without this kind of a mess. And that's why nobody did it. Everybody else's agenda for their political legacy, whether it was Trump's wall or rescuing us from 2008 or whatever, had priority. And you can argue that priority, but it had priority over Afghanistan. And every possible moment where an exit could have been, executed out of Afghanistan heretofore was passed on because it was politically garbage. It would have resulted in American deaths It would have resulted in Afghan deaths. It would have resulted in arms getting into the hands of people. It would have resulted in the collapse of the military, the collapse of the government, and that's why we never did it. And that didn't change in the last 12 years. It's not going to change in the next 10. There has got to be a way that we can help the people of Afghanistan who want democracy and freedom and all the things that go with it that aren't at the end of an M4 or a bayonet, as they like to say. And if there isn't, there is no bigger sign that we are unwelcome in that regard, and that the people, like people who fled Europe and came to the United States looking for freedom from whatever situation they were in, they left their home country behind because it no longer represented the standards that they wanted for themselves and their family. That is the purpose and the modus operandi of the United States of America. One of the ways we help the most is be the place worth going to. We got time for another couple of calls. I think we have some, so let me ask Lady B. Lady B, do we have any callers on the line? You go to?
We have one more, Dave from Hoffman State.
Excellent. Let's grab it. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, Al. Hey, about a week ago before all of this, happened, there was I don't know if you happened to see this photograph where these Taliban were making a mockery of that infamous photo where the Marines were putting the flag up on Mount Suravaki. Mm-hmm. And in this one, these fighters, it says it belongs to this Badri 313, which then you're comparing or calling the Taliban's elite commando unit. And they're showing wearing full camouflage uniforms, combat boots, tack gear, night vision goggles, and carrying weapons and equipment, everything from a lot of it from when the Afghan army, bugged out, dropped off,
right.
Got rid of their stuff. And them images are noticeable departure, from the depictions of what we see of these Taliban, who sometimes wear the military
tribal
stuff
clothes, right?
Weapons. But this stuff is like these guys look like some of our own hardcore dudes, and.
Well, by the way, for whatever it's worth, real quick, for whatever it's worth, is an example of Western fashion culture and encroaching on their tribal system. It is not them wearing some sort of, the Taliban. The word Taliban means student. It was reflective of their belief that they are students of Islam and they are always, closer to it than everyone else. This is a big departure from wearing the clothing of students, which they traditionally wear to show that they are a member of the Taliban, and is as much a Starbucks extension into the world of Western military culture as anything. The fact that that's what they put on to show that they are the elites is indicative of a switch in culture from them long term, anyways.
And where this ISIS-K now, and it's showing that the Taliban they're like mortal enemies of them too, and they've been we've been kind of consulting, talking with them, and it's kind of like a case of because of the common enemy, it's kind of like my enemy's enemy is my friend right now,
right? Sure,
sort of,
That's that is the essence of Middle Eastern strategy for the last 45 years. Is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. There are no, there's and the people who are quote are straight up friends that aren't friends tangentially through a shared enemy, largely bug out of the region and go elsewhere. They come to live in the United States or Canada or South America, or they move to Europe, or they move to parts of Africa and settle. But they don't stay in the countries where, that they are in the middle of this back and forth between two hated parties fighting each other.
Yeah. Hey, I'll close out with, where Trump is always doing his backseat quarterbacking. I would have did this. There was a time when he was whittling the troops down to 2,500. There was an outpost or a fort that, the special forces guys, he had to take off, bug out of there so quick that we had to call in jets and the Zoomies to come in and rocket the place because there was a lot of sensitive information and equipment, so they could not take with them.
Well, that's where he thought
outpost, but.
Right. Well, and I mean, the Russians ended up with 2 of our outposts. I mean, you call them bases, but they were much smaller than that in Syria. Right. You know, same situation. And those were basically handed over. Even the places he bombed in Syria, he let the Syrians and, Assad through the Russians, he let them know exactly where the missiles were going to hit because they're that precise, so they could move all their stuff out of the way and go use a different runway. Because this was just going to be a PR bombing. And they're used to that in that part of the world. You have to understand, that's a part of the world where they're going to bomb us just to make a point. Right.
I'm going to listen on the side. Be well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thanks to all the callers who called in today as I was filling in for Joan. It was a great time in general. Yeah, you have to understand, in the Middle East, there's been so much strife over so much time. And as much as I know people want to believe that America is the singular bad guy in all of this, and somehow they find some solace in that, I'm sorry to inform you that there are a lot of active players in all of this, and none of them are good. And there are oftentimes the Americans will be in a mix of a bad political decision and good military strategy trying to fix it, and the exact opposite, bad military strategy and good political opposition trying to fix it. If it was cut and dry and black and white and all like some sort of, if the right was correct and it was the deep state keeping us in there, and if the left was right and it's the military industrial complex keeping us in there, the solution would be equally as simple, and it's just not. And so we need to be on guard around the complexities of these issues and not simply acquiesce to this idea that there is some sort of political or geopolitical Bigfoot out there that nobody has a picture of, but we're sure exists. There are many times over the last few months where it's been the end of the Biden presidency right now. I mean, Chris Wallace, even in coming defense of the entire situation in Afghanistan, is still saying that this is the end of the Biden. I mean, honestly, no one can recover from this. As if anybody else had a problem recovering from not leaving, never getting out. I mean, people are rehabbing George W. Bush. You're kidding me, right? I mean, most people thought Cuomo could actually run for governor again next year in spite of the accusations against him until he left the dog at the governor's mansion. And then that was the turning point. That was the last straw. That was it. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Thank you, Lady B. It's always lovely to interact with you. I always consider myself very lucky when you're around and on the other end of the speaker. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody at CPT. Joan will be back next week, starting on Monday. And, of course, my show will be on tomorrow at the regular time, the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. And we will be taking your calls and talking about this and no doubt have more of an update on the ongoing effort to get Americans and allies out of Afghanistan, and the reality of the fact that we are way ahead of schedule, considering we were supposedly way behind the 8 ball. That in and of itself is fascinating to me. We'll find out, what the political reaction to that is and whether it has any impact on the reality. Thanks so much. And for those of you that watch my normal live stream, I will be up and running in about 10 minutes. I'm going to shut down and then restart everything and just make sure everything's clean for the show. We'll be back after that. And then I will see you guys tomorrow as well. Thanks so much. And thank you, Lady B. Thanks, everybody at CPT. You started playing the music, so I'm assuming we got to get out of here, right? Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
I'm gonna.
Daddy said hi.
Who was that?
Patty, she's here.
Oh, nice. Hi, Patty. Hi, everybody. Big waves and hugs to everybody. Hi.
Great show.
Thank you. Okay. Bye. See ya. Thank you. Okay, I'll sign off on there. Bye, everybody in Chicago. All right, I'm gonna close down this show, and then I'll restart in a few minutes. Those of you that are in the chat room, there'll be a whole new stream that will pop up after this on Twitch and everywhere else. It'll just kind of blink back in about 10 minutes, if that's okay with everybody, so I can reset and make sure I solve my audio problem so it doesn't drive me crazy during the entire